well in the space, and then so they do all that stuff. And so I'm just like, you have fun with that. I'll just yell into the microphone and roll dice and stuff when appropriate. That sounds way more fun anyway.
Nice. Well, we're off and rolling. So
Cool.
So I guess to start with, because this is the inaugural episode, I'll take just a moment to kind of introduce the podcast itself. Then we'll get into introducing you, and then we'll jump into whatever we go for.
Cool.
Do you have a hard out? I guess would be a good.
Not really, no.
Okay, cool.
Not at all. I don't got no meetings. It's just more work shit to do, as you know.
I do.
It never stops.
I did know. I don't currently have a.
You currently, right. Probably the reason why you're like, cool. I don't want to do that anymore.
Do all this crazy stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay, introducing the podcast to start with. So, the podcast, I'm still playing around with names, but basically the idea here is just a place to talk with fun people, to have interesting conversations and tell stories and just kind of hang out and have fun. So there's no real theme as far as guests. I'm like, literally anybody can come on. Like the bar is just kind of like, do you want to talk for a while?
Yeah. Do you like conversations? Yes.
So yeah, so that's it right now. Maybe as this thing develops, there'll be more themes and whatever. But for now, I would like to welcome then the inaugural guest, Jacob Plicque the Third.
What up?
Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Plicque?
You were really close. It's so much easier than people think it is.
Okay.
Simply one of two things happens. The first one is what you did, which is the correct pronunciation with like the wrong inflection point. So it's just Plicque.
Oh.
Instead of Plicque, because you did like two E's, right?
Yeah.
But it's because I'm so focused on it all the time that like I only point it out, right? But typically, what's most common is people mispronounce it as Plicque.
Huh.
Now, the irony of that statement, though, is it's French. Let's say it's French. It typically means like woodworker of some sorts, anyway.
Interesting.
But what's wild about it, though, is I was digging into it, and I was just like, if it's French, wouldn't it be Plicque?
Right.
And I talked to my dad about this, and he's just like, no, that's not it. And I was like, I think we're wrong. But like, how do you go back and fix 230 years of like mispronunciation?
Well,
I guess you don't.
If it's French, I just imagine it's like "ple," like
yeah,
just drop everything off the end, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, off the cliff. And so it's like, I think we're wrong about this, but like, this is like not a hill to die on, like by any means.
Oh,
but
I hear you, man. I have a name that everyone mispronounces on the first go, usually too, right? You just kind of like you stop taking it personally at some point.
Yeah, because they either flip. Do they flip the Simons and Simmons?
Yeah, it's Simmons is like what everyone says, and at some point you just kind of go like, yeah, that's cool, that's good enough. Like you tried, sure.
But see, that's ironic for me because like I would think it's obviously Simons because Simmons would be two M's.
Right. Yeah, that's
just me overanalyzing.
But
so.
And it's actually fascinating too how many people have that name. Like even the name Matt Simons is stupidly common. Weird, but anyways. So okay, but you, because you have a numeral in your name, you get a special like ye olde announcement. So you are Jacob Plicque, third of his name, master of dungeons, priest of chaos, co-founder of the Empatheatre, devotee of the trigger Chrono, streamer of Twitch, and teller of stories.
Indeed. Yep. All these things are true and accurate, and I'm adding it to my resume right now.
So welcome. So a brief overview of like some of the topics that we might cover. So obviously the Empatheatre stuff, DMing, gaming, tabletop gaming, all of that. I want to talk a little bit about your background, sort of your origin story, if you will. I always like framing people's stories as like what's your superhero origin story?
Yeah.
We'll talk about other games like Chrono Trigger, video games, video gaming, Twitch and YouTube, like that stuff, and just kind of storytelling and your career, and we can kind of like wherever you want to go with it.
Wherever it goes, yeah,
we'll go there.
Cool, yeah, I'm down.
So I guess in background, this is one of the things that because you are Jacob Plicque the Third, I don't know many thirds. or seconds. I just know a lot of firsts. So
Yeah.
what is that like? I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Why people, like, why did your dad choose to give you his name, and why did his dad choose to give him his name, and all of that? Is there a legacy
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think it's the wildest thing, and I think many people probably feel this way about their own origin story because it's theirs. It's very ordinary, right? Because it's what they know. It's all they know in the very base level of who they are in existence as like even as a child. And so, because and even still, like my dad calls me Jacob the Third, or I'm the oldest of four. So the short name for me is Son One, and which is funny because I'm the third, right?
Yeah.
But I never really got the sense that like both my granddad on my dad's side and my father were ever big on legacy. But but I remember like even as a kid being like very like proud to like have this name. What I do because like I would even consider like if I ever have kids, like would my eldest like firstborn be like the fourth. And I think there's two ways to look at it. Like one is, which is funny because I'm a very chaotic person and I grew up very rebellious, and that has not changed at all in 35 years of existence. And so it's like, do I just go against the grain, which would be a normal thing for me to do, and switch it up, or do I just go like this is still something that I'm really proud of that I don't really want to get rid of? So yeah, like even so as a kid, it was just like that's cool. And also like to your point about like I know a bunch of like firsts and stuff. It I don't think it didn't really dawn on me until when I was much older, like how like unique that was, because it seems obvious. Like, why wouldn't it be like the first, like your firstborn son or daughter? Like, why wouldn't you have that named after you? Like, in many cases, like it's the greatest thing that's ever going to happen to you, right? And
Yeah.
so makes sense to me, but haven't got there yet.
So you said you're the oldest of four, right?
Hmm?
You,
What's
you
that?
said you said you're the oldest of four.
Yes, I'm the oldest of four.
Are the other three jealous?
No, I don't think so.
Because for you, it's this great. It feels like it's kind of an
Yeah,
honor, right? Are they like, man, I wish I
yeah.
had that?
Not like because like well, it also doesn't help that like I'm obviously me, and then I have two younger brothers and a younger sister who's the baby of the fam. Um, and with the exception of Alexis, who also has a J middle name because they ended up switching things up, Joshua and Joseph, so there's still like that like J mentality. So it's not different enough that like even though like I doubt they would ever like say something to me in that regard. But I never got the sense that they were just like, oh, why couldn't I be in this name?
Damn this birth order.
You're right, exactly. But so it never really came. I guess never became a discussion, if you will.
That's cool. It seems like it would place a lot of like responsibility on you if you have kids, because then you're like, well, if I'm gonna name my firstborn after my name, if you
Yeah.
want this train to keep going, you better not be an asshole, because like
Yeah.
because that's where they're gonna stop naming, right? Like your
Mhm.
grandkid is not gonna be named Jacob if they're like, nope, the legacy is tarnished, right?
It's funny you say that because a conversation I had to have with my parents recently, because my parents are getting up there. My dad will be 70 in August, and my mom is that right? Yeah, 70 in August. Yeah, August 52. Yep, that's right. And my mom is going to be 63 in December, something like that. And they're just like, where they at though? And I like it got to the point of like legitimately like uncomfortableness, right? But also like there's also this other piece of the pie that I had to explain to them, which is like when they were growing up, this was the thing to do. And like in the age of, millennials and stuff like that, we're going to work and like we're doing our own thing and we're striking our out on our own and making our own destiny. And in many cases, like you sacrifice all that to have a family.
Oh yeah.
The irony of that is my mom moved to Jacksonville with my dad away from they grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana originally, and so So I understand the mindset of like, well, I did this for you, but it's like that's also not really fair because like I didn't get a fucking vote. Like,
Right.
I didn't even exist yet to be like, no, you can totally stay in New Orleans. It's totally cool, man. It's totally cool with me. And so I literally had to like shut them down. I was like, this is and that's something that's I think really difficult to do with your parents too, is like to establish boundaries.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is like no longer a conversation we're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
If it happens, great. And yes, like I firmly would like to go in that direction. Life has not produced that. But what life has produced? I've got a really nice house, and I've worked really hard, and things are going really well financially, and all my friends are awesome, and like that's something I'm really cool with.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like we have something very different. You know, obviously the economic circumstances of our generation are very different from our parents' generation. When I first got married, my wife and I both wanted kids, and we were just like, well, but we can't afford them yet. Right. Like that was the conversation. So we're like, well, we can't afford it. So I guess, we're going to wait. Happening. And then just eventually over time, it was like, you know what, this is actually kind of like, maybe we don't need that. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that. I've had that conversation with my parents too. Mine have luckily been a bit more, I say luckily that this is them intentionally, but they've been very respectful around that conversation and not super pressured, but you grew up in a Catholic household, is that correct?
I did.
And you went to a Catholic high school.
That's almost correct. That's almost correct. My mother grew up Baptist.
Okay.
My dad grew up Catholic, and then as part of the merger of familial entity, if you will, as a youngin, we definitely split time between both, but eventually the Catholicism won out, I suppose. So I did go to as you mentioned, I did go to a Catholic high school, which is pretty wild how that happened actually, because that wasn't initially the purpce.
Yeah, tell me about that, because that's something I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, so when I was in so it ties back to rebellion here. I was a pretty rebellious kid, which is ironic to me now because like now I'm this like ridiculously loud mega extrovert, and at the time I was a very small 4'6" super depressed introvert kid, but like who wasn't at 13 really, let's be honest. And so but and also like from to your point around like just differences of times, like Google didn't exist in 1999 or 2000 and stuff like that. So like I'm, for lack of a better term, acting out, right? And like I don't know what to do, and my parents were I was seeing like a child therapist at the time, and was diagnosed with like all these different things, depressive, bipolar, ADHDs, OCD, all these things.
You're a kid.
You have like 11.
Life is weird.
Yeah, the TLDR of that is I was I'm super ADHD, but no, I was not bipolar. I did not have OCD, none of that things. But at the time, like I shit you not, like 8 or 9 like different pills like during the day.
See, diagnosing children with adult disorders seems like sort
really
of bad premise to begin with.
Really, really bad. In hindsight, 100%. So then they're presented with an opportunity to for this organization at the time called Boys Hope, which was like, let's take Jacob out of this environment and see like what resonates. Like are you the problem? Is Jacob the problem? Is it a combination of both? And so I ended up living in this group home for about a year, and which was like really nice. But they were very much just like, all right, it's like the diagnosis, if you will, at the end of the year was like, okay, like this Jacob's the issue. And I was like, all right, that's an interesting bold strategy, Cotton. When it's like, I'm 14, like I'm just literally the answer is you're 14 and hormones and like you don't know what the hell's going on, right? Yeah. And so, but I had made friends, and like at this point, I'm ingrained into that the society that we call high school, if you will, and we. So I'm there for a year, and it was actually a scholarship. It was completely paid for, and my folks were like, well, we can't afford this tuition at all, so you're gonna have to go to the neighborhood school. And I like begged and pleaded and cried and like all this other stuff. And I'll never forget what actually ended up happening, which was I literally said at 14, I was like, I'll go bag groceries as long as we can like stay. Like, because like it was just like I was super invested in the 10 people that were my friends at the time.
Yeah.
That, which is totally fine because that's your whole world
Right.
at that age. And so that is how that started happening. And then I eventually, of course, graduated from there in 2004. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, it was wild. I often joke with my fellow alumnus as well as my bunch of friends that both were kind of around that time, where it's like it's a great way to a great cheat code to atheism is to go to a Catholic high school.
Did you identify then as an atheist going to Catholic high school?
I did not actually. I was on the short form for seminary school at one point in my like sophomore junior year of high school, which is pretty wild to think about now. And it's funny because the top two people that were like, we got like these like awards for like, not, it sounds so awful to say, but like essentially it was like best loudest faith walk person. And like, and I'm an atheist and she's trans, like now, like, so it's just like, not that she wasn't trans then, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And
no,
so
as somebody who grew up very religious as well, yes, I know a lot of people who, at that age, you're not set yet. You're still jello. That's like you're jiggly.
Yeah. But to answer your question, like, I ended up, I was out of the house. I had, moved and was really starting to like get my sea legs underneath me, even though I was super poor and ate ramen and hot dogs. And it's one of the best years of my life because like it was you sink or swim, and like it's you. That's it. And I learned so much about myself then. But I was also like I was even telling my dad like I'm gonna go visit a synagogue. I'm gonna go visit a mosque. I'm just gonna see, because in my mind at the time it was like, let's see how the other half lives, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was like, well, these are a lot of the same things. Well, then this doesn't really make sense. And then this contradicts things. This is kind of, and this is not to make fun of anyone's walk or anything like that. This is just my experience, obviously. And then I was like, this is kind of, there's something that's supposed to be infallible. This is kind of fucked. This is bullshit.
There's an awful lot that doesn't make sense here.
Doesn't really put together. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm good. But the coup de grace, I will say, ultimately for that situation was I watched a talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson from 2004. It was called Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. And essentially the TLDR of the talk is like, how does intelligent design make sense if the entire universe is trying to kill us? Because like this will kill you, this will kill you, this will kill you, this other thing will kill you. And it's like surrounded by like all these other things. And I'm like, yeah, that's really I think I'm an atheist, you guys. All right, cool. Awesome.
Has the state of the world, the kind of apocalypses, is that the plural for apocalypse?
That's a good question. Apocalypse?
I don't know. The multiple apocalypses that we're facing now, has that solidified your stance there, or somehow like, I guess, how do you look at that through the lens of your experiences? Because like I kind of think about it in terms of like, the whole thing is goofy, right? Like it's like that scene from Austin Powers with the steamroller, right? Yeah. Where like, you know, but there's like 5 steamrollers, right? Choose whichever one you want. Climate change, you know, the threat of destabilization politically at the global level, right? All kinds of stuff. Nuclear war. Pick your poison. Yeah, there are many, and they are all these like steamrollers coming at us very slowly. And we all like, it seems like we could just jump out of the way, and instead we've made it this spectator sport where everyone's just taking bets on which one's going to get us now.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think like, right, especially in that, and I also think it lines up with like maturity as well. Cause like at this point now I'm in my late teens, early 20s, and you're not quite the level of maturity that you need to be yet. And so I was pretty militant and like very like vocal and loud about like, this is dumb and like da 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 da. And now at the age of 35, I'm just very much just like, you know, that's cool. Just stay the hell over there. Like it's cool. The problem is of course, as you as you mentioned, like in some cases, there are people driving those steamrollers with the banner of Judeo-Christian values, as the kids say, and you're just like, but like that's you're trying to kill me though, right? Like, can you not do that? Like,
yeah,
and I know that sounds like so like outrageous, but like these are the realities that we're facing right now.
Or even if they're not driving, they're sitting there going like, well, Jesus is going to stop the steamroller, right? Like, I don't need to do anything because or the steamroller is part of his plan, right? Like it's like either way, the gist is like, we're just going to sit here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I'm just gonna, like, I don't even want to be we're sitting on this ice rink. Like, can we just go? Like, let's just go grab a beer or something, Yeah. So now I'm very much like, so now I pick my spots. Whereas, I decide to be more vocal around things like Black Lives Matter and trans rights being human rights, which is just a base level need to like not be a douchebag. Like, that's really it. That's what's ironic, I think, about it. And so
that's it.
So the fact that like in many cases, like the people that we're talking about here, and it's not everyone, but it's more than zero, don't believe these things, and it ties in directly into the religious aspect and the dogma that they're preaching, is like that's when it's time to get loud and yell in those spaces, I think.
So maybe connected with this or not, that question of like a superhero origin story, if you were to look at your life through the lens of like, Batman has his moment where his parents are shot and that's like his turning point, right? At the age of 35, like it seems like you understand pretty well who you are, your identity.
No doubt.
You have a pretty good idea of that. Is there a turning point? Is there a superhero origin story moment where or maybe multiple, where you can think back in your life and go, that's where things changed for me. That's where my identity solidified. That's where who I am kind of crystallized and came into focus.
Yeah, a couple of pieces come to mind quite quickly. I touched a little bit on sort of moving out for the first time. And they may remember it differently, but I find that like when you think about moments that happen in that, involving your family, like there are multiple, obviously everyone has it's a classic example of there's one side, there's the other side, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere muddled in the middle. And we had this like big fight, and this is again 17-year-old me here. I was like, I can't wait to move out. I'm gonna like not tell anybody, and I'm just gonna like disappear, which is of course like super like ridiculous and overarching and like absolute like madness.
Just
and
nuclear option.
Nuclear option. But I'll never forget what my mother said, which was, you can't afford to. And I like grabbed onto that statement, and it like motivated me for like legitimately like I think the next 9 months of my life, because this fight was somewhere in the like right before I graduated, and by the end of the winter I was out. And how it happened was exactly how I said it was going to happen, because I waited for everybody to go do their thing, work, school, whatever, and I packed up all my stuff, and my roommate at the time came and grabbed me, and we moved. And by that point, I had already gotten approved for the apartment, and we had gotten the keys and everything. Got all my stuff, which was essentially just clothes, television, video games, like the classic bachelor picture that's online all the time, where like this bachelor, like this like someone please tell these men that this is not how you're supposed to live. When it's like which I completely disagree, because that first night we were sitting on air mattresses. We had two, like one like recliner and like our GameCube.
And it was the best day of your life because it tasted like freedom.
100%. So I'm out, and I'll never forget. My mom calls me. I answer the phone, and she goes, "Where are you?" And I go, "I'm on my patio in my apartment." And I hung up the phone, and I turned the phone off for 3 days. Didn't answer it. Let him freak the fuck out. It was I like, as I tell the story, like I remember it, like I see it right now. I know exactly the street that I'm on, like all that stuff. And it felt so damn good. then of course reality sets in where you have $20 a month for ramen, hot dogs, and Kool-Aid, to the point where you are. I can't even. I'll tell you this.
I love that
I can't
Kool-Aid
even
makes the
go.
list, by the way.
Of course, it has to. The sugar's extra sometimes,
Yeah.
but you can afford it. But I can't even go down the ramen aisle at a Walmart because the smell, it stays with me, because it got so bad where my body would just reject it. Like, this is not sustenance, sir. So we'll take the sodium, and the rest is coming back up. And that was it. And so yeah, there was even days where like I couldn't even afford that, and so I would go to work. And at this point, I'd working at a call center, and how I would deal with hunger pangs is I would just drink a bunch of coffee, and that would make them go away for a while, and just drink a bunch of water. And so I did intermittent fasting before it was cool, essentially. So that was like such a huge independent like moment. Now, this only lasted about a year and a half. For the sake of brevity, moved that particular roommate situation didn't work out. Moved back in for a little while. Moved back in and out, as most people do at that age in the earlies. But it saved my relationship with my parents, because me and my dad were like right at the point of like, where I'm going to fight this man. Like, I'm going to fight him. And so it was like it was the wrong economic decision for all the right reasons of like, this is not going well. And so we have to separate this in some way before somebody else gets involved. Right. So that was really, really important. Then it was, so fast forward, let's see, that's 18, 19, 20. So fast forward to 25 years of age, where, you do a job here, and, $11 an hour here, $15 an hour there. And this was when I was trying and failing to make my way into the tech world. Which, as I've told many people, it's just about finding that door. Like, once you're in, you're in.
Yep.
It's just, and I had a bunch of these like little start stops of like working at this call center to get this internship, that internship was going to happen, but then the VP that was sponsored that left the company. Okay, great. I'm starting from scratch again. And then it ended up being a Craigslist ad for a help desk job doing remote support for Geek Squad, which was amazing.
See that, because that's interesting, because that's not a job that like you say remote support for Geek Squad and I immediately go, that sounds like a great job.
Yeah, it was, and then it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's a classic example of like when you're inside of a space, like, you don't really see like what's happening like outside of the bubble. But at the same time, like, I'm just cleaning up viruses and installing printers remotely for grandma and grandpa. What's not to love? Problem is, it doesn't pay very well. Right. But that was my in. And then I got to do like a remote, like I went from like that to like an IT help desk job and stuff. But all that was based off of a particular sheet of paper that I wrote, which was 15 years. Well, let's see, I was 25 at the time. It was 15 years to get to six figures. So my goal was to get to six figures by the time I was 40 years old. And so it was like, and which is so funny because none of the things happened the way that they do, which is another lesson anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very much, how do I get here? And like, I need to get this degree by this point, and then this certification in Cisco or Microsoft at this particular point, and then move here, and here. But it was the mindset of like having that long-term like strategy, which I'd never done before, that I put together. And it ended up happening at 32, and none of those things happened. I don't have a degree at all. I am a very proud 4 or 5 time college dropout. Because every time I would get stuck, cool, I gotta go back to school, and then another opportunity would pop up, and then I would leave, which was another point of contention for my folks, because they were like, you said you were gonna match us, because at one point I said I was gonna match them degree for degree, which between the two of them they have 3 master's degrees.
Wow.
So I was gonna get like 2, which is pretty amazing on its own. But then like the big conversation after like that, like the final conversation around that was like, all right, so I'm gonna pull a little bit of I'm gonna have a little bit of hot sauce here and just say I make more than the both of you combined, and I don't have any degrees. So, oops. So that was another piece where it was just like, oh shit, like I'm onto something, and like my long term rebellion story has continued to what's the term? I almost said provide fruit, but like bear fruit, bear fruit.
Yeah.
Has continued to bear fruit. Um, and then so of course these are all like very like money motivated like type, so more of a villain origin story really, the but what I but I'll never forget like the last like the third piece of the puzzle was I my junior year of high school. I had this was when so this was also I mentioned the time where I'm like on a cocktail of different pills and stuff like that, and I'll never forget we were on the way home from school one day. I looked at my mom and I said, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean you're done? Like, not taking another pill, not like they don't know what's because of course this is at 17. They don't know what's wrong with me. So I'm just gonna like not worry about it. And I'm just gonna live my life. I'm just gonna do like for lack of a better term, I'm gonna do me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like whatever it is, fine. Like it's cool. I will survive. I will work hard, and you know I hopefully will reap the rewards of all of that. And so fast forward to my 30th birthday. So I have a bit of an ego, and I thought I was like I have to. It's the big 3-0. I gotta throw the biggest damn bash possible. And I have a very I'm fortunate to have a very large, very ridiculous friend group. So my friend was had this like big like, 2-story house with we could fit a bunch of people in there. And I bought like a keg of like one of my favorite beers, and I was ready to go. And I'd been like spreading the message of this for like I don't know like let's say I was born October 7th since like June or July. Like I'd been really working on building this party up, right? And we all go out to lunch, and then we have a couple beers, a couple of post lunch beers, and I'll never forget. We walk outside, and there's a blindfold on me now, just in the middle of the street, and I'm just like, what? What are we? What? Everyone's like, slow down. It's all good. It's all good. We're gonna get in here. You're good. You're good. Because I know who's with me, so like I'm not getting kidnapped.
Right.
No, but I am getting kidnapped. My friends are kidnapping me. Where are we going? Right. So and I know where we are, and like my spatial awareness told me that we were going the wrong way. Actually, hold on. I'm actually telling the story in the wrong way. So we get in the car. I don't have the blindfold on yet. We get in the car, and we're driving to what I think is supposed to get more like we're supposed to go get like some chips and salsa or something for the party. And I'm like, we're not. That was our turn, and like no one's saying anything. Guys, like, what? We're supposed to go that way, and then turn the music up. They're ignoring me, and I was like, what's going on? And then we park, and I'm like, like I know we're downtown, but I don't know where we are specifically. And then as I open the door, that's when they blindfold me. And so I was like, so now I'm freaking out. Now that's when I was like, I'm freaking out. Like, what is happening? Right? It doesn't dawn on me at all that like there's like a surprise or like anything. I'm just like,
even though it's your birthday and you're literally at your birthday party.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm on my way to my birthday party that I threw. Right. Yeah. It didn't even dawn on me that like something like it was just because I know so vividly that it was about the loss of control. Like I was in control of that entire narrative for 3.5 months or so, which by the way, the week before, like a hurricane had hit, and I'm a Floridian, so that doesn't mean anything to us. But there were a few folks that were like, oh, like we're gonna go to shelter and we're gonna go like we can't make it. And like I actually have a friend of mine that was like, you should probably consider canceling it. And I was just like, I'm not doing that. So fast forward to I'm like tripping upstairs because I love them so much, but like you could have told me that there were stairs coming and that not me fall up them. And so we walk in, like I feel like the air conditioner kick on, so we're inside something, and the blindfold comes off, and it's everybody, and everybody yells surprise, and I just burst into tears because I went right back in time to that moment with my mom, and that moment of independence. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Like that moment of independence where I was like, no one's going to take anything from you anymore. No one's going to decide where your life goes. You're going to make friends. You're going to be awesome. You're going to be loudly and proudly you. And that decision at 17 got me to that moment at 30. They had rented out a different place. They had had a secret party invite that they've been planning since June. Because I was out with some friends and I was telling them about the party. As it turns out, another one of my friends were like, "Are we really gonna let this dude make his own party?" And then
that does seem like something that responsible friends shouldn't let you do.
right. And so then on top of that, all those people that were threatening to cancel, they lied. They were there too. And so I cried more. I was like, "You fucking liars!" So it was just like, yeah, I was like, "You did it. You've won. Like that's it. Checkmate. Game over, man." So that's the long story longer, but
that's incredible.
Really important moments.
It's interesting to me. We grew up in very different places, very different circumstances, but there are a lot of similar threads. I also didn't it was 26 when I got into tech. School and stuff before that. Anyways, I won't tell my story. This is about you, but it's fascinating to hear so many things are very similar, and it's really cool. So I want to ask you then your background, of course, the Duval. It's fascinating to me, when you started talking about your childhood and how some of that was, everybody. I don't say everybody. Most people that are interesting have some sort of traumatic childhood, right?
Sure.
But as you're going through everything with high school and like all the things that were sort of bad, I'm kind of like, man, why do you love that area so much? But but now hearing all the friends that you created and sort of the independence and sort of that being sort of I can kind of get it now. But is there more to that? Like why does Jacksonville and like explain all that if you can?
Yeah, for sure. So it is so funny. It's again the same situation of like it's very ordinary because it's my story. When it's like when there are several moments in regards to just what Duval is, because there is a sense of rebellion about that specifically that resonates with me, just both independently and as a friend group and like as a culturally here. Locally, because Jacksonville, which is like the largest city by landmass in the entire like country, with the exception of like one area in Alaska, and let's be honest, who cares about Alaska? Let's be honest.
I mean, Alaskans, but I think I know like
one every 15 cubic miles. Give me a break. And so there's this sense of like, people don't really care about Jacksonville because everyone cares about Orlando and Miami, and the capital's in Tallahassee. And yet like people still like flock to Jacksonville now. Like it's pretty rare to find someone that's from Jacksonville. Everyone's from New York or Texas or in the military or out of country or whatever it is. So I'm like a very rare breed that's born and raised Jacksonville, even though my folks are from New Orleans. I was born here as well, and it's also like this like sense of pride too. Like before, the world panini here, as many of my friends like to call it. You could go down Main Street, Jacksonville, Florida, and it'd be dead quiet, and 8:00, 9:00 at night, and this isn't a hypothetical because I actually did this, and I just looked around. And I yelled Duval as loud as I could. And it was like, the scene of Beauty and the Beast when Belle's like walking through the streets, bonjour, bonjour. That's literally what happened. It was returned to me like 15x. I thought I was floating. The adrenaline shot was like so amazing. And so there's this like,
I bet that makes you feel powerful too, right?
Oh my God, are you kidding me? There's only one other time that I've done it that made me feel more powerful, which I'll get to in a second. But I think that's where it came from, because the Duval call, if you will, started out as like this like there's a R&B station at the time, and just as a your classic. Remember when we listened to the radio? Your classic like radio out of like you right before they play a song, right? And then they yell Duval and they cut to the song, right? And then the Jaguar sort of took a hold of it, and it sort of just like spread like wildfire. And so it's very like part of like the local identity here. But because of the fact that like it's my like the first 5 letters of like my Twitch handle and my Twitter handle and all this other stuff, it became like a rallying cry for like me as well. Like there are many people that know me that have no idea that I live in Jacksonville or know anything about Jacksonville, but it's because like I'm loudly, proudly me, as I like to say. It resonates. It also helps that it's my Zoom and Google Meet background. It's not like I'm not reminding people of it all the time. As a distant acquaintance once said, as I was on a Twitch stream to somebody else, not knowing that they would share this with me, God, that guy's got such good branding. And I was like, it's completely by accident. It's completely by accident. So the number one Duval story has to go to Buckingham Palace. Which for the initiated is in London, where we were there. We were there for the London game,
which is just a little bit further than a few miles away from Jacksonville.
Just a hop skip, if you will.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Duval East.
You can see it from the beach, right?
No, yeah, of course, absolutely. Just right over there. It's over the horizon. And we were there. So London's really cool. On top of the fact, the only problem with London is that there's no sun, and like as a Floridian, like that's just like hazardous to my health. Which is funny because I'm an engineer. It doesn't make any sense. But so we get out there and it is so quiet. Like I can only think of one other time, which was in Hiroshima, Japan, where we were at the Peace Museum, like right like where like the atom bomb hit. That was quiet. And this was on that level. But I had read on the internet, so it's true, that the Queen is in if the flags are up. And I look and I thought to myself, and I look back at this moment now, and like, how did like I ever put these like two thoughts together like congruently here? I was like, I wonder if I yell Duval loud enough. Would the Queen hear me? I guess there's only one way to find out. So there's a set of stairs that's right in front of the big gate where all of the classic oh my God, what is it called? Red coats with the hats and all the ridiculousness, right?
That
everyone's fairly familiar. Yeah. Guards, sure. And so, and I don't tell any of my friends I'm doing this. A bunch of us were there together, and I just walk up the stairs and I just let the biggest inhale possible and just let it fly, right? And what I did not expect, because what I was expecting was like nothing to happen.
I was like,
right?
See, you tell me that now, and I expect you to get piled on by security guards.
It's funny you say that. So what happened is the Duval was returned to me about 30-fold because I forgot. Duh, there are Jaguar fans that are also touring London here for the Jags game, and so it's just an explosion of sound that people are not prepared for, and so now. So I mentioned floating last time. Now, like I'm Super Saiyan 5 levels of hype, right? I'm just like straight out. I was like, I can't believe that just happened to me, right? And so like I'm like giving like high fives and hugs and like all this other stuff, ridiculous. And then like out of my peripheral, I see like these 3 cop cars, and I grab my friend Greg. I'm like, Greg, we gotta go. And we passed the fuck out. And we just got the hell out of there. That was our Buckingham Palace experience.
Oh, because like if you're a security guard and you don't understand like Duval, right? Somebody yells something at the top of their lungs. I'm expecting they're wearing like an explosive vest, right?
Yeah, something really bad's about to happen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't think about that at all. Nope, not at all. It was just this like moment of adulation and ridiculousness that like should not have happened and is absolutely irresponsible. And so I've now done it at the Empire State Building, and
so you've repeated it, of course,
Rockefeller Center, and oh yeah, absolutely.
Has it been returned every time?
Actually, weirdly enough, yeah, every time. Wow. The one time that I specifically expected it to not happen was in Japan, which I randomly found this one guy that was like, oh, I was in there's this place called Roppongi in Tokyo that's known for its nightlife, and we ended up being outside of a club that was partially owned by someone that was stationed at NAS Jax, which is a Naval Air Station, Jacksonville. And because I yelled Duval outside, we got in for free, and we had 3 free drinks each.
That's awesome.
So it's like there is no like I'm just gonna yell it everywhere and just like see what happens, consequences or not.
Is there a proper form when yelling Duval?
It's so funny you say that. Yeah. So it's Duval. Many people, because what's really funny to me is
so it's not like Duval. It's like
So,
Duval.
yeah,
like
exactly.
Walk me through this.
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to just do it?
Just do it, man.
All right, cool. Here we go. Duval, like that.
Like you've even got like there's like a doorbell chime in there,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
Duval.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's funny what you just did. My friend Jorge does it like that. You go Duval. I'm just like I'll take it. It's because I also think it's the fact that like it's so ridiculous that makes it so much fun to say and just yell all the time.
Yeah.
Like I was at a panel at PAX Unplugged, which is like a big tabletop convention, and I was doing a panel, and like I was just talking, and then like the audience yelled it at me, and I was just like, I'm going to cry on Twitch now. Thank you very much. Cool. That's awesome. Because like I think it's because it's just this like ridiculous sense of joy that happens around it that makes it so much makes it so bringing it back around to the original question. That's what it means.
Absurdity and joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's cool. I'm actually, in a way, I'm jealous because I have lived lots of places, moved around a lot, and so to have a place that you can kind of identify as yours, right? Like that you look at Jacksonville and you're like, this is mine. This is my place. This is where my heart lives. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's something that I take for granted sometimes because it's mine. You know what I mean? And like because it is home, and like to the point where like people will talk like shit about Jacksonville, and I'll like go after them. Like there's never anything fun. This is before the pandemic, where obviously stay home, wear a mask, etc. Where people like there's never anything to do. Like I was just like I've never had that problem. I've always gone out. Hell, I've even invited you, this person, out somewhere, and you decided not to go. So I don't want to hear it. We're gonna move to Orlando because it's less. Yeah, okay, all right, buddy, sure. But the oh my god, I was ranting and I lost my train of thought. But where was it being home? So speaking of Orlando, that's when I knew that my experience with Duval and like that pride, what came back to haunt me is when my friends played a practical joke on me, or a prank, I guess you could say, while I was on a cruise ship with no internet. They had photoshopped all these like images and posts that I didn't see until 3 days later about me moving to Orlando. and Photoshop like Orlando City like football club gear on me, and like it got so bad that my dad was like, "You didn't tell me you were moving to Orlando." I'm not.
You have the best friends.
They're the worst. Ugh. I love them so much.
Listen, the love language of friends is giving each other shit, and they've
it's true.
Yep, they have shown up for you. They have put time and effort into giving you shit.
I haven't even told you how long it lasted.
How long did it last?
6 months.
They put together a 6-month PR campaign.
Yeah, like it to the point where like I'll like so someone will like ask me. Like, are you moving? And I was like, no. And then, like, to the point where, like, 8 of them would be like, he's lying. We're on the way down with a U-Haul right now. And they'll take, like, a picture of it and, like, Photoshop my head into it. I was just like, why did you my favorite image, actually, of that is there's a milk carton. Like, like, the old, like, someone's missing. There's a milk carton. Where is Jacob? So bad. And like there was a going away party. I literally have gifts from the going away party.
Oh
It
my
was so
god,
bad.
I
It
love
was
it.
so bad. It was incredible. I will say though, like it, where I had to put the kibosh on it is when people legitimately got like hot about it. Like
Oh
legitimately were like where I was like, okay, we gotta kill this because like people were legitimately getting mad at me about it.
yeah.
And I was like, all right, we've moved, we've flown too close to the sun here.
After 6 months, there's a point where they're like, "Did you go? Like, why aren't you
This
there?
isn't really
Like, come
funny
on."
anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Like I like my address is like I have a house. Well, at the time I was renting a condo, but I was just like you know where I live. You could just come over and find out. Yeah, it was a
You won't
mess.
see boxes here.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's switch topics
Mm,
and cover the other part of your background now. So we've talked
yeah,
about
sure.
Duval, Chrono
Mm,
Trigger. So why is
indeed.
Chrono Trigger the best game ever? How like what's your history with video games?
Yeah,
We'll start there.
sure. Yeah, I've always had a game system of some kind. The because you have your you know how you when you're very little, like your parents tell you what your memories were, which was me having I would my experience with Super Mario Brothers at age 3 was hitting the right stick or the right D-pad, and then I die, and then I was my dad's turn. So that was my experience initially, but my like grade school memories with video games start with specifically Sonic, especially Sonic 2 and 3 and Knuckles. And so this is like I'm like 7, I think. And you know, your classic, especially when you're the older brother, play with your brother. Um, so what's great about Sonic 2 is you got Tails.
Yep.
And which you haven't seen the movies. Holy shit, they're amazing.
Really?
Oh my god, I can't believe how good they are. Like they're really good, super fun.
Wait,
And
the
so,
recent
yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them. The one that came out last year, 2 years ago, and this one
I didn't
is
even realize there
really
was
good.
a second one. So okay.
Oh damn! Yep, yeah. It just hit theaters like a week or two ago, and the
All I
second
remember
one.
of it is like the meme of like they messed up his face and then fans made him fix it.
Oh god, yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, it's all right. The fans fixed that shit real quick. That indeed. It's fine. They made their money back because it's right now it's the #1 movie in the world. So like, I'm sure they'll be fine. Yeah,
Wow.
Sonic 2 in the year 2022 is the #1 movie in the world.
Today I
What the
learned.
hell? Today I learned. So I played because especially with games like that, like Mega Man, like a lot of this very pattern recognition, and in many cases, it's the only game you have, so it's all you play. Um, but what resonates so much with Sonic 2 specifically is I would give my little brother a controller and he would play Tails, except for the controller was unplugged. He did not know this. I did this with both my little brothers. They did not know this for over 20 years, Matt. I kept that a secret for 20 years. I will
Wow.
never forget. I should have took a video of the big reveal. I was just like, because we're just, you get together with your family, you tell stories. Like, remember that time where we beat that game together? And I was just like, so yeah, have a seat.
Was there
We
a
got some,
dawning of their like now I know why I have shitty hand-eye coordination and it's
yeah,
your fault.
right. I never. No, they were just like, I can't believe you did that. And I was just like, yeah. What you don't know is like every older brother did that. Like
Yeah.
literally all of them. No, I love you. I did not want to play with you. I wanted to play Sonic by myself. And I'll never forget. My dad was like, "We knew that," and I was like, "No, you didn't. You did not know anything because you would have yelled at me. Stop it,
Yeah.
stop it. Get out of here with that revisionist history." So, and this I would play Super Mario World at my buddy Mike's house all the time, and
Which
fast forward to
was a Super
Super
Nintendo
Nintendo.
game where
Yep.
Sonic was on Sega.
Sega Genesis, right?
Yep.
And I never like because it's funny because many people were like, "You're either a Super Nintendo home or you're a Sega home" back in the day, and I was just like, I didn't like I had both in my mind. Like I just had to walk literally 5 houses down, and like I have it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not even a big deal. And then I'll borrow Streets of Rage from my friend. And then even at the time, like I didn't really know anything about like role playing games or anything like that. But what really resonated with me with Chrono Trigger was initially was like first of all like this game is super fun and the soundtrack is just like banging, super incredible. And then the story and the characters are like just out of this world. Like I'm actually playing it on stream now, and I'm just like even now I've beaten it no joke over 500 times. I try to beat it at least like once a year. I have 2 Chrono Trigger tattoos. Where are they? I have like 15 tattoos, so like who knows where they are. You can barely see it. There's Chrono and Frog right there,
Nice.
and then there's the clock from the the opening and the logo. That's the word, logo. And it it just I remember it resonating with me based off of this. What starts as initially a very small story of like the hero saves the girl, and then escalates to this world-ending event, which is pretty common for most JRPGs. But how they tie things together and then add in something as complex as time travel and make you care about like these NPCs that it like still super like resonates. On top of the fact that they made some really risky decisions, like you can. It's a spoiler from a 23-year-old game, so bear with me. But like, you start with the main character, obviously, and near the end of the game, he dies, and you can choose to figure out a way to save him, which you can, or not. And it's one of the first games that has like multiple endings. It's got 13 canonical endings,
Wow, I didn't know that.
which is amazing considering. Don't get me wrong, majority of them are variations of the
Sure.
same, but but they still all end differently. There's definitely a couple that are my favorites, and then there's one that's like your classic like programmers like debug ending, and like where like you get to like this room and it's like all the sprites of like all the people that made the game.
Huh.
And plus like the history of it is really interesting now because it was this like at the time this dream team of different people, Akira Toriyama that made Dragon Ball, and Hironobu Sakaguchi who helped make Final Fantasy, and like all these people coming together to make this game.
Yeah.
And we see and there are multitudes of games that exist now that would not exist without Chrono Trigger's influence. And so if it didn't exist, it would be very different. Many people definitely live on the Final Fantasy VI versus Chrono Trigger band. It's classically one or the other. And yeah, Chrono Trigger is, in my mind, the best game of all time because I don't think a game has ever made me feel the way I feel about video games the way that Chrono Trigger does.
And I never played it all the way through, but I remember one of the things that struck me as innovative at the time, which makes sense now that you mentioned that one of the creators of Dragon Ball was involved with it, is that it was one of the first games, at least I can remember, that had this sort of epic power progression curve to it.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like you really start off as a like if we're going to talk in like D&D or like tabletop RPG terms, you really do start out as like the fighter that's doing 1 and 2 damage, right? As and then later on you're doing thousands or millions of damage and fighting bosses with millions of hit points. And it's really one of the first games that ever had that sort of ridiculous power progression to it.
Yeah, and it's so tightly designed, and you feel it too. Because many times, like it typically will go off into like this is too hard, and so I have to grind and sit in an area for an indeterminate amount of time to get the hashtag get good. You never had to do that with Chrono Trigger, really.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, which is a lot.
Yeah, I have to admit I jumped in and peeped on your stream one
Oh
night.
yeah,
That was fun to watch you playing Chrono Trigger.
nice.
It was cool. Did that experience with video games, was that what got you into or exposed you to RPGs of the tabletop variety? Or I guess maybe I'll just ask, how did you get into tabletop gaming?
Yeah, sure. So it got around to that where I think I realized very involuntarily that that's probably why I love the TTRPG space so much. Is it's the fact that like when you play a video game, like that story is written, right? Like yeah, there's a multitude of endings, and you do different things, and experiences would be different from your friends and all this other stuff, and then you get to write your own, but in a very improvisational collaborative if you're at the right table collaborative way that like really resonates in a way that I didn't expect, and also like it's also a really great cheat code for developing friendships, because I went from like decent friends with my first table that I played at the time Pathfinder TTRPGs with, to like those are like my best friends. And I remember somebody said something to me one time that really resonated, which was just like, but like these are all like things that are happening like in your head or like in front of you, and like drawn maps and miniatures and dice and things. But the reality is like those memories still happened. You still saved the world. You still lost someone that you cared about. Like, yeah, that's make believe and stuff like that, but like those emotions are real. And so like, and I'll start with the end of that campaign, and I'll work my way back to the beginning to tell you how I got into TTRPGs. There's literally that campaign was a year long. It was based off of Disney, different worlds, like kind of like Kingdom Hearts, if you're familiar with Kingdom Hearts. But the way that the GM tied it on its head or flipped it on its head was all the bad guys were good guys, and all the good guys were bad guys. So we're hanging out with Jafar and Scar and getting to know them, and like all these like
are they still
care about
evil, or are they?
No, they're like
okay,
they're good. So like, but what's cool is so all the Disney princesses are evil.
I mean, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Right. It tracks kind of actually when you think about it. They're all so selfish. That's a whole different rant. But what was cool was they turned into this coven of witches. And then that's when I realized I was like, oh, I know where we're headed. And I literally like, I'm at the table and this like, I don't know, like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, and I grabbed the table and I was like, guys, I think we're going to fight Maleficent. I think they're summoning Maleficent, and I think we're gonna fight her, and then she's gonna turn into a dragon because she's got to turn into a dragon. She's Maleficent. I remember like being so excited, and I remember I was looking at the gym, and he was just like grinning, like not trying to like sell it or whatever. And I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna like lose my mind. And the way that ended. Are you familiar with the Fastball Special?
I'm not.
So the Fastball Special is a move from X-Men, Marvel Comics. Colossus, the big Russian metal man, takes Wolverine and throws him into an enemy.
Okay.
And we've been trying to do that like in some mechanical way in this campaign all year. And my friend Ryan,
with like a barbarian and a bard or something.
He's a barbarian, and I was playing this like Dex fighter with like these two like flame tongue kukri or whatever. And to kill Maleficent the dragon, like he tosses me in. He gets the kill, but he gives it to me, like tosses me up to kill it. I shit you not, I was so excited. And keep in mind, this is at 3 a.m. We've been fighting Maleficent for like 5.5 hours. I slammed my hand into the table, and I felt it give way and reverberate with me. Luckily, I didn't break the whole thing. But like, adrenaline. Like, I didn't go to bed at all that night. Like, I went to bed at like 10 o'clock. I was like losing my mind. But it actually, how TTRPGs got, so bring it back around, how I got started with it was I was hearing stories about this campaign that I heard about that my friend Sean, who I love so very much, he's like my DM senpai now, and he's taught me a lot. And so we ended up playing it and having an incredible time. And then he was like, "All right, guys, I need a break. I'm tired. I've been running this campaign for, at that point, I think almost over a year. And he was running it with 2 different groups at the same time. And he was like, I gotta go. And I was like, but like, I need my drug. I need more. And he'll never forget. He looked at me. He goes, why don't you run your own? And I was like, no, man. Like I can't. I don't know. Like I don't. Nah, I'm good. And then now I'm fast forward. That was 5 years ago. Fast forward to I'm running 3 campaigns, and I'm in like 3 or 4. Oops.
And what made you make that shift then? Like, what eventually changed your mind to switch over and go like, you know what, I can do this? Because I've had that
desperation.
Because I love playing tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time, and I know that like, did you ever play World of Warcraft?
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Of course, everybody does, right? Or has at some point. DMs are like the tanks in World of Warcraft, right? Like if you want to go, so like in World of Warcraft, there's never enough of them. If you want to just like jump in dungeon after dungeon after dungeon, every party is lacking a tank, right? There are so many people that want to play Dungeons and Dragons, but don't have either the confidence in their storytelling ability, or just haven't done it before, or lack the experience, or for whatever reason, there is a shortage of really wonderful DMs out there.
Yeah.
I've experienced this. I haven't played in a tabletop RPG group for a long time, but and I know that the shortcut would just be like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it, right? So is that what what made you take the leap?
Yeah. And at the time, it was very clear that it was me or nobody. Because at the time, like he was building a waiting list of people that wanted to play, and I was just like, well, like if no one's going to do it, well, that's not true. It's not that if no one's going to do it, I'll do it. It was just like, why not? Like eventually, I just talked myself into it, where I was just like, what, like if you want this so bad, you need to go do it, right? Like if this is this important to you. And it's not just this flash in the pan thing that we'll look at 5 years from now as like the thing we did 5 years ago. Miss those days, right? What's better than giving that experience to somebody else? And like that's what DMing is for me. It's like, and especially early on, where like especially when as you learn to DM, like it's not, because there are many people that feel like it's an adversarial thing, which is not. It is legitimately a collaborative story. And so, which is why, like, yeah, like maybe you run like this like module that's like pre-written and like these are all the characters and stuff like that. And then they go to this, they go left, but the module says they go right. Oh shit! I don't like. What the fuck do I do here? And then your brain turns on, and then you improv your way. And there's these moments that you create because what you say goes. What you say is canon because this is the world that you created. What's the name of that street? What's on the street? What does it smell like? What are the people on it? What are people doing? What do they look like? What happens next? And like, that's something that I get to decide in 2 sentences, right? Like that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. And then they get to engage in that and then play, right? Like that's amazing. And so that's when I knew I was like, I'm a lifer, like no doubt. I was joking with somebody the other day where like everyone was talking about their favorite classes. And because of hashtag Forever DM, like now I'm like, well, I think my favorite class is Dungeon Master. that's pretty much typically what I do now. Don't be wrong, I get to play every like I'm in a couple of campaigns, but you know the majority of the time it's around, because especially when trying to get into the online space, which we can talk about a little bit. It was the thing that's unfortunate is there wasn't a lot of representation. There wasn't a lot of people that looked like me that were doing this. And so I spend that year playing that campaign. I start to play in a couple of campaigns locally here. They start kind of getting not like a name, but just like, oh, like Jake's like all right at this. Like we want to play at his table and stuff. But even still, that wasn't enough. Like this is also like on the verge of like Critical Role, and which if you're not familiar with it, it's huge now. Like good lord.
I was going to ask you what you think of Vox Machina.
Oh, I love Vox Machina.
Yeah.
I actually have a Critical Role tattoo that is a small one right here with
Nice.
my friend Brittany, who was in that first Pathfinder game. Of Vex and Vax, who were the 2 half elven twins in that campaign. And yeah, like what's weird is like that all culminated at the same time, because like the end of campaign 1 for Critical Role was right around the same time that the end of our first campaign was. So it just like kept.
Maybe we should pause here for somebody that maybe isn't familiar with Critical Role, or I mentioned Vox Machina. Give us the 30-second, like what is Critical Role and how's that come about?
Yeah, so the pitch of Critical Role is that it's a bunch of nerdy ass first actors playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is certainly how it started for a channel called Geek and Sundry. And it went, and they didn't think it was going to do anything. They were going to have one session and then like nobody gives a shit about it. And then 5,000 people watched it, I think.
Yeah.
And then
Geek and Sundry is a YouTube channel.
Yep.
That was they've done stuff like board game how-tos and all kinds
tabletop
of geeky stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So they started publishing basically their D&D sessions.
Correct. Yeah, they started playing their offline game online in front of the world, and not thinking that it would ever catch fire. And fast forward to now, it's its own company, and they have people like 50,000 people concurrently watching them every Thursday night, which is absolutely doesn't make any sense. And they're on their third campaign now. And and super kudos to them, because I don't think that I would have even because I remember how I not fell in love with, but how I hopped on the Critical Role train was Vin Diesel was promoting a really bad movie that something about the Last of the Witch Hunters or something like that, and he played this hour-long D&D session with them, and that's how, and that video was super popular, and that got a lot of people into Critical Role as well. And so that's why I learned just from watching Matt Mercer, DM and stuff like that, and sort of built my own style. And then, but then quickly, I'm running these 2 campaigns, and I'm but I'm not playing. Well, that's not true. The DM is a player too, but obviously a lot of my time is spent, prepping the next game and all this other stuff. And I just wanted to play, but I also wanted to see who's out here, because my mega extrovertness was I don't know enough people. Let's find out what the internet looks like. And I was just on Twitter one day, and this couple people were looking for some doing casting calls, and so initially starts out bad, gets really good. So I answer this casting call, and this guy goes, "Great, you're in." And I was like, "That was fast. All right, cool. I guess I'm in." And it was just this TTRPG called Tales from the Loop, which is really, really good.
I was going to ask you if you've done other RPGs aside from Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah.
Do
Tales
you have a favorite?
Blaze in the Dark. Is incredible. Very heists in this weird 1950s the sound of the video game, with added tech and ghosts and some weirdness.
Oh, well, that sounds right up my alley, because my favorite one is oh god, why am I blanking on it now? Same kind of a setting. It's future. It has magic. It has implants, robotics, all that kind of stuff. Cyberpunk.
Yeah. This one's less cyberpunk and more post-colonial, but add in there's definitely that body modification aspect to it.
But heists are Shadowrun. That's it.
Yeah.
Shadowrun. Awesome. Shadowrun's my favorite.
Shadowrun's good shit.
Especially because I'll go on a minor tangent here.
Yeah, but, go for it.
One of the things that I love about Shadowrun is how Dungeons and Dragons, and I know that this is stereotypical, this isn't always the case, and probably the best DMs avoid this trope, but the trope is always you're out there to save the world. You're the good guys, you're out there to save the world. And it can get kind of hokey and repetitive over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, sure.
Whereas with Shadowrun, you're just world's just kind of a shitty place, you're in it, you're just trying to survive, and you're running missions, basically.
That's what Blaze in the Dark is a lot like. Yeah. It's the world sucks, but this establishment shit, let's just fuck it up. let's blow it up by going to a masquerade and stealing this artifact that they're putting on sale, and then that escalates into making enemies with these other people, and then those relationships, and how that sort of impacts things. But yeah, and so I was but also Blaze in the Dark, Vampire. I'll pretty much play anything at this point. Let me just tell some stories, it's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, and so so I answered this casting call, and he was like, "Cool, you're in." And then literally a day later, so I jumped the gun because the GM actually cast these roles already, and so sorry. And I'm like, all right, awesome, cool. And he's like, but we can do this other thing, which is he connected me with this guy by the name of Jackie, and who goes by Death My Mage on Twitter. He's super fun, good follow over there. And we were gonna do this TTRPG news show, this weekly news show. And in my mind, it's this is an opportunity to just get your name out there and make connections and see what happens. It ended up not really going anywhere because Jackie got super busy, and because he's doing a lot, because he writes a lot and stuff like that. But that connection was made, and then I was able to meet this other guy by the name of Maddie, who goes by So Maddie Games on Twitch and Twitter and stuff. and he was doing not exactly a casting call, but he was doing this GM Chats show. And I remember seeing that specifically as a really good opportunity of like, there are people that will probably sign up that's been playing for 20 years or so. I've been GMing for, at that time, 1 year, and I have lots of things to talk about, and I have lots of things to say. And I knew, especially at that point, that like there's not a lot of people that look like me that are out here doing this. And so I felt it was really, really important to do. And so that went like super duper well. And then that sort of went into this like charity stream, and then essentially created a really deep relationship and friendship with him, and then eventually led into him asking me if I wanted to run a campaign for him, and that's how Duval and Dragons started.
That's cool.
And now that will be 2 years in June, which is ridiculous.
So it's interesting that you bring up representation. So this is something that I found is kind of interesting, which is that the tabletop gaming space. We can talk about the actual makeup of that space in terms of sort of demographic representation. Yep. So maybe the success or failure of inclusion in terms of the actual makeup of it is one thing, but I'll say that at least my experience with it is that the intent, the actual openness of that community to inclusion and representation, I have found to be pretty fantastic. Has that been the case for you as well?
Yeah, but I also think it has for me in my experience, no doubt. But then you hear stories of it not being so much so in many cases. So like there's a part of me that's like, all right, well, cool, I found the right people, right? But I also think there's a piece of it that people don't think about, which is that this is not when you think about diversity and inclusion, it's a very active, like, fight isn't the right word, but it's an active choice.
Yeah.
And so, like, here's a good example. If I'm looking at a Twitch screen or a video or whatever it is, and to be perfectly frank, and it's all a bunch of white people, I turn it off because you didn't try. Oh, we went to go look for the black people, but we couldn't find them. I'm the loudest person I know. Like, you didn't look, bro.
Just
like,
listen for someone for the faint cry of Duval.
Yeah, you know? Right. Exactly. I'm not hard to find. And so like, and so like, there's like that active, like sigh.
Yeah.
But then so like, for example, like when we were casting for Eulalia 5-Year Redwall story, I made a very specific choice because, well, so two things happened. I didn't say this as part of the casting call, but I was like, I'm putting 2 black people in. I'm focusing on making sure that I have at least one other black person that's not me, and then I also want women and non-binary and like and I want the fucking rainbow is I think the words I used actually when I was talking to my business partner Bill. And what happened was we had several really great applications, right? There was 36, I think, in total. The first 23 were white males. And I was just like, come on.
Yeah.
And so I remember specifically reaching back out and I was just like, I know you're here. So I'm going to specifically call out BIMPOC, what up? Trans, what's up? Like who are you? Where are you? Let me see you, right?
Yeah.
And so now we have this like amazing, diverse like cast of like really incredible people and super super talented people that
who are dedicated. They even like they dress up. I saw.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode. Like it's awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah. I'm so proud of that.
I really appreciate that perspective because I don't, as a white dude, I don't see some of those. I guess the points of conflict or when people aren't included. My perspective there has always just been from. Well, I'll say I went back into tabletop gaming a couple of years ago. This was before the pandemic. I wanted to get back into tabletop gaming and in fact started playing Warhammer and just went to local game store where people played. And I had never played really, like I didn't know any of these people, but the experience of being able to just walk in and just kind of like, hey, I'm here. I like a thing that you like. Can we do this together? And the immediate just sort of welcoming, like, yeah, you like this? You're one of us. Let's do this.
That's it.
That's like, that was really cool.
Yeah. And take that like kernel, right? And zoom that back about 20 to 25 years when like this wasn't cool. And then add in the satanic panic and like all these things that were designed to kill this space that we're talking about that is now more popular than it's ever been in the history of anything. And you know, just like, you know, comic book movies, it's cool to be a super nerd, you know.
Do you think that there, from the racial perspective, has it been difficult for the, because like white people have still, like, it feels like we embraced being nerdy a while ago. Has that been, has there been a lag from other, I guess you can only speak to your own racial background, but did it, has it taken longer for other communities to get okay with that, or to see that as not just a thing that only white people get to embrace? Like, what is the really racial dynamic with nerdity?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, because like when I was young, like I took an L on many cases because I'm already a small, short, introverted, depressed black kid. Then I'm a nerd on top of that.
You just spent your entire high school with your head in a toilet getting swirlies.
L's. Yep, all the time. It's funny you say that. In my freshman yearbook, there is a picture of a young Jacob Plicque III being shoved into a locker. Dead serious.
Wow.
Yeah, it was for the photo, but like it's in hindsight, it was like I should have really said no to that. Like, I'm not making this situation better. I'm normalizing it. But you're
you leaned into
you
it.
don't know anything. No doubt. I was just like, I just wanted to be on the phone. But you like me. You really like me.
Sometimes leaning into it is the way to go, right?
100%. And so, and then like even as I got older, like specifically being black and a nerd was like, just like, what? Like, why aren't you playing basketball? Or which is ironic because I was, but I was also
both,
like playing. Yeah, right. I don't have to choose.
Don't put me in a box.
Right, basketball is only in the winter anyway. Yeah. And it was. That's actually true. And so kind of like living that life was always like a really strange one. But I was never like outly proudly nerdy until really like my college 2 years. And that's because I was like the vice president of our anime club, and like I was really starting to like blossom into the extrovert that I am now. And so I never really saw the negative aspects of it, versus like I just knew it existed. The situation that's weird now to sort of play with is because like I have to deal with the fact that like I'm very proudly and loudly black, but I'm also privileged because I'm a cis male as well. And so I'm also having to make, because like here's a good example. There's a channel, I believe, Transplanter RPG, which is like the entire cast is like trans, right? Which is so fucking cool. But it's also like, damn, I would love to play with those people.
Yep.
But like, it's not the table for me. It's the fact that they get to have their space and create the way that they want to. And what my job is there is to retweet and share like what they're doing, right? Yeah. And there are other opportunities for me to play with those folks, you know? And so, or create them. That's actually kind of why the Empatheatre got started, which was like, we'd had we were playing a D&D campaign, and the channel that we were on was going away. And we had a big, meeting of like, what do we do? And I remember like right away being like, we do our own fucking thing. Like let's just do it. I have no idea how to start a Twitch channel. Let's go find out. Like, but that's really like been my entire adult life, is just like fuck around, find out.
Fuck it, let's try. Yeah.
Yeah, like
which is such a great attitude for life.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes, because like you'll be like, I don't know how to do this, and like Google's not helping me because you're not Googling the right thing, probably. It's not Google's fault that you don't know how to Google, Jacob. But but it but it's when you get to the other side of it and people are supporting you that you're like, oh man, like I'm like what I say is resonating. And so yeah, so to bring it back around to like the demographic type thing, I still think it's still pretty predominantly white male. And they're even to the point of, and I had this conversation with a lot of people of like, well, I didn't experience the what people are talking about, like the lack of diversity and inclusions and stuff like that. And but I think the problem is in a lot of people, a lot of cases, and I don't think you're not doing this, but a lot of people, because it didn't happen to me, it didn't happen, or like you're over analyzing or you're overreaching when it's just like, so you're just, because it didn't happen to you, you're just gonna like devalue what these other people are saying. Like that's really fucked up. And so like those people need to do better job of listening. And so that's kind of why I'm kind of happy to be both black and cis male, because I kind of have the lack of privilege and the privilege at the same time. So I get to see a lot of the different spaces and how it's interacted with. And because there are people that are in those spaces that don't feel like they have a voice, I'm happy to use mine.
Yeah. It's a really interesting intersection. I'm glad you shared that perspective, because I know as a cis white male, that's like nobody's really. I'm not being persecuted, right? Like that's
Right.
not. I haven't had some of those life experiences that others have, where you can see well. And so let me continue that thought then.
Yeah.
Some of
Yeah.
allyship is a complicated space, right? And as you've sort of articulated some of that, being an ally and being a good ally is something that is incumbent upon all of us, and learning how to do that and how to be a right to be a supporter and be an ally. And yet at the same time, there are experiences that you have, just like you articulated with that group of all trans people playing. There's a certain point at which you go like, and now I can't be included. There's places where you go like, I can't be included in this. Well, let's even go to the Empatheatre, right, where you said the first 23 applicants were white dudes, and you wanted to have greater representation, and so those guys were not able to be included because of their race and gender and orientation. And so there's a certain point where you kind of go like, okay, I am privileged, and yet I am being denied opportunities to some of these things because of things that are not under my control.
Yep.
Which weirdly then kind of gives you a certain amount of empathy for that situation. Exactly. At least that's how you should look at it. I think if you're being an ally, is not like just raging at like, well, I don't get to do this thing. It should be like, oh, yeah. I understand now. I understand now what some of these people, or some shadow of what they've gone through. It's a very complex space to navigate, and I think the biggest part of it, and this is why I love the name, the Empatheatre, is it's about having empathy for people, right? It's about not being self-centered, taking yourself out of it, and being able to look at the larger picture of not just like, well, I wasn't able to be on the Empatheatre because I'm a white dude. Like, okay, that's part of the narrative, but now have empathy for all the other people that have been not able to be included or persecuted in very real ways just because of who they are.
Yeah. Or even like worse, couldn't even be themselves to their friends. And like, my friend Nora, who I was talking about earlier when we were talking about like, and you're trans and I'm atheist now. We both Catholicism. But we had a sit down lunch, a really emotional sit down lunch of like catching up and stuff like that. And I remember I'll never forget. She was just like, yeah, like I've known this forever, and like and like I couldn't like process that initially, right? Because I was just like, I'm blown away by her, like consistently her strength and she's an amazing person. And then like to for that to be like in like an eggshell like all this time just doesn't like compute to me. Like And so this is where, to your point about like allyship, right? Where like, how do you create a space for someone and then shut up?
Yes.
Right? Because like a really key, something I talked to Bill about, who I mentioned it works with me on the Empatheatre. A key growth metric for us is for us to be not on screen at all. Like Eulalia is really like the first, like, we had a couple of missteps when we started. Eulalia is really the first like big, like, longer term campaign that we've been doing, and then the second one that we're going to be doing is going to be run by Bill. And I was really like, because we were talking about like character stuff, and I was just like, should I even be in this one? And it was like this like really like jarring thing where like I want to play D&D like all the time and stuff. But if like we're doing what we say that we're doing, we have to create space. In order to do that, that means that we have to take a step back. Right?
I love that, because I believe, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm saying things that, and please correct me if I'm
Yeah.
saying things that are wrong. I hope my intent comes through, which is to be a good ally.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I've learned about being an ally is it's not about you.
Right? Ding, 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 ding. That's it. You've unlocked the puzzle.
Because it's funny, like I know like different work affinity groups and things like that, where it's like, I want to help. How can I help? And you're like, oh, I could do X, Y, and Z, but then you kind of go like, but that puts too much of me in there, and that's not. It's okay. More just about like, okay, what can I do to help enable to like as an ally, right? Like I should not be in the spotlight advancing a Black professionals group, right? Like, what can I?
That would be really wild,
right?
Yeah.
Like
that's tone deaf as fuck.
So it's like, well, what can I do to help amplify your voice? What can I do to help, like to be in the backstage, right? And and for some of us, that's not a place where we, like, if you're somebody who is maybe you enjoy leadership positions or you whatever, like, I'm sorry, then that's just not your space. Like, you're not going to lead in that space. And if that's what you normally do, like, that's maybe going to feel weird, but that take on a different role. You can play the supporting role in that space. That's how you can be an ally.
Yeah, everyone needs clerics. We all need clerics.
Absolutely.
Be a cleric. Be a cleric. That's the takeaway. No, but what's weird too is like I remember like especially right after George Floyd was murdered, and let's be clear, that's what happened. Yep. There's no doubt about that. And the protests really started hitting like their apex, and I'll never forget. It was such a powerful moment for me personally, where like we're all out at this park, getting ready to go walk and march around, because we were essentially gonna walk around like the mayor's office. Or no, this particular, well, we did that too, but this was around his house, because we had some things to say, and like we're all like, okay, cool. Like, what if we don't have our phones? Like, what if we get arrested? Like, we have like lawyers' numbers like written like on our arms and like waterproof Sharpies and things like that. And like this isn't just Black people. Like, these are like, this is all across the board. And I remember feeling like so like endlessly proud that we were willing to do what needed to be done. And like, if that mean we didn't come home that night because we spent the night in jail, so fucking be it. And like the other half of it that I think is really difficult for a lot of people from an allyship perspective is they tend to, that doesn't sound right. What happens is you start to ask questions, which is fair. You should ask questions. The problem is when you're expecting like these concrete like answers. Because like when that happened, like I got so many messages. What should we do? Da 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 da. And I got to the point because I was like, I'm tired. I'm tired. And which is a weird experience, because like my power is the fact that like I'm loudly and proudly me, as I said, and my voice is where that comes from, right? And so I remember like I boiled down to listen. Just listen. Just be there. Like, that's what's important. And so like the fact that like these people were out there and just listening, because I think one of the things that I experienced way early on, we were talking about like trauma and stuff earlier, but is when you don't know something is trauma until like years and decades later, around like something that is like unadulteratedly like racist, and then but you compartmentalize it and swallow it up because you're just trying to do other things. Like I've been arrested twice for literally just nothing. The charge is literally, I'll never forget it. It is possession of a suspended license. My license was clear and green, and by the way, I wasn't driving. Um, and so, but I compartmentalized that situation, that particular night, told it as a party story, uh, and then really, and this happened in like 2009, and really only processed that was like the worst night of my life maybe like 5 years ago,
Wow.
where it's just like, oh yeah, like that was because if I knew what I knew now, I would own Jacksonville Sheriff's Office because I would have sued it to oblivion, right? But I was a scared 22-year-old kid, was more worried about making sure that I got out tomorrow so I could go to work, um, and versus like this is not okay, and like I'll never forget. Like I was like, "What are you arresting me for?" And he's like, "I'm not sure." You're not sure?
Whoa.
That's not how that works. And so yeah, so it's the reality that like these things are happening, and then it's like, here's the hard question: is because of what happened to all these other people that look like me, should I consider myself lucky? I sat on that for like a really long time. The answer is no, because it shouldn't have fucking happened to anybody.
Right.
Like I had an old gym old personal trainer that was like pretty conservative and just didn't really understand. Like he's just like he definitely fell in the classic example of well, like if you weren't doing anything wrong, like it wouldn't have been a big deal. And I was just like, they're gonna arrest you for no reason too, bro. Like
Yeah.
it's bigger than that. Like how do you not like see it, John Cena? And so it was like, so I was realizing like all that like animosity and like lack of confrontation that I was just like sitting on, and like I was able to like really like weaponize it and like let it fly by like telling the story the right way of like this is the reality of the situation. And so I think me telling that story very loudly is why a lot of my friends were out there, because they know like if this can happen to this guy, this isn't something that is a isolated incident. This happens in our backyard, and it happened to my friend 10 or 15 years ago where there was no cameras or any of that shit, right? So yeah,
There wasn't nearly the mechanisms for accountability that exist today.
no, not at all.
That's wild. Yeah, I actually recently told a story when I was in high school and realized just how much white privilege I had, where my friends and I were out committing crimes, stealing street signs. And, the realization that I came to was I was like, holy shit, like, if we had a black friend in our group, there's no way we would have done that stuff, because we grew up like me and my little group of white friends, and we grew up in sort of a like northern Montgomery County, Maryland, which is kind of like where all I mean, my parents weren't rich, but like we were, and like they were whatever. We were middle class. We were solidly middle class, right?
Yeah.
And like there certainly was a racial like we were not an all white school, but my friends, my little friend group, we were all white, not because we were trying to exclude anyone. That's just kind of how the chips fell. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, thinking about this, like we were honor students and whatever. And it was like, yeah, but we all grew up with this narrative that like the cops are our friends, right? We all grew up with this narrative
Officer
that
friendly. What the fuck?
Officer friendly, right? That they're there to serve and protect. And, you find out, of course, that's not what I believe now. I'm sure that there are, I want to believe that there are good cops, but the evidence certainly seems to show that it's a much more complicated dynamic now. And you knew that 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And
no doubt.
And for me, this was something that I'm even kind of ashamed to say. I was, it took. I wouldn't say George Floyd was what disabused me of that notion. Like, it was before that, but I don't know that I could put my finger on it as far as like when I learned that. But I was an adult when I learned that, like, oh no, cops were nice to me because I was white.
Mm-hmm. That's a statement, right? Yeah, sure, yeah, no doubt. And like the thing that's but I think that's where people get the people that are, for lack of a better term, pro cop get where they go wrong is they get focused on so ACAB. I'm very, very ACAB, to be very clear. But they get focused on, but like, that's my friend, and like, he's really nice, and like, he was a straight A student, and I'm like, none of that actually matters at all. It's about what they represent, right? The irony, to your point around like the protect and serve situation, right? You believe this particular pretend person here that they're here to protect and serve. I do not feel the same way. I have proof many times that is not just a feeling, that is an actual fact. And unfortunately, until that person is impacted negatively, they feel that they're in the right.
Yeah.
And so that's how it starts at officer friendly in 5th grade and builds and builds and builds. Which is why, like, if something was to go wrong, right? Would I call a cop? No. Oh my God. I got that. Do you know the story about how I was accused of a squatter when I bought my house?
No.
Okay. So, and then we can bring it back around on the Empatheatre.
You were accused of being a squatter after you
I was accused of being a squatter after I bought my house.
In your own house.
In my own house. In this very house that I'm sitting in right now. So now, again, traumatic, but ends up being funny-ish.
I'm laughing because it's fucked up, not because it's actually funny.
No, of course. No, for sure. And please do. So I buy the house in July of 2020. And but as many people do, you're in between places because like you don't have any furniture, and like how the hell do I getting to and from like areas and stuff. And so at one point, like my door is like, I left my door ajar, but it's like, who cares? There's nothing in it to steal, whatever. Who cares? Somebody called the cops. And the cop, I went in, like there's a couch and like a bed because like that's what I had moved already, right? And I'm in my condo and I have like a phone call at like 3 a.m. from like Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and I was like, all right, and they're like, so and so, you've got like squatters in your home or whatever it was. And I was like, okay. So I go over and I'm like, looks exactly the same as when I left it. All right, whatever. I leave. I get another phone call. Same time. Of course, it's 3 o'clock, so I'm asleep, right? And at this point, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what has happening? Like, I don't think this is really real, right? And so I come back here, and there's a sign in my yard that says, and I quote, JSO confirmed squatters, which I gotta send you. I gotta find the article.
Jacksonville something office. What was
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Sheriff's, okay.
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Yep. And so and I was like, they did, and so I called them. I'm like, you confirmed squatters? Like, I don't see any evidence of that. And they're like, no, we didn't. And I was like, okay, well, like, can you like just not send anybody, like, at all? Because like I'm gonna be here, and it would be nice if like nobody shows up, like, at all, please and thank you. And they're like, well, sir, like, the usual rigmarole here of like, well, we have to answer if people call, blah blah blah. Here's the article. And so I'm literally on stream, right? I'm sitting right where I'm sitting right now. There's a knock on my window. This is my office is right where my I can see my front lawn from right here. And it's a cop with, you're knocking with the fucking flashlight. And I look exactly like this. I go, I'll be right back. And I go to the door, and and they're like, we got to call, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, I literally told them not to call you. Like, what are you guys doing here? Right. And like, I give my ID and like, all the rigmarole. Right. So at this point, we've had 3 phone calls to the cops, at least. Right. And I go, is there paperwork like that's been filed? There's been no paperwork ever that exists outside of like my voicemails of these cops calling and this big ass sign, which you can see in the picture. This big ass sign on my lawn that someone just put in. And I was like, "Did you guys put this in?" No, we would never do that. So it means I was like, "Oh my god, it's a neighbor that put it in." And I was just like, "Oh no!" And then that's when I was like, not like someone's out to get me, but someone that saw this black man walking into this house assumed that he didn't buy this house and that he was just squatting in this house because of like there was like 2 or 3 things here at the time. And so I was like, I don't know what to do. What the fuck do I do now? And then my buddy Jake was like, I have a producer for this is First Coast News, local news station here. I got a producer's phone number. You should really call them. And to their credit, because I thought they were just like, this isn't news, goodbye. It was not only was it on the front page of this website, it ran at the 5:00 p.m. hour and at the 5:30 p.m. hour.
Good.
My Facebook exploded. Like my Twitter exploded. So I made the strategic decision to not be here and be at my condo when it went live, right? And then I was gonna wait for the second airing, and I was like, let's see what happens. And like I was having trouble like getting like a lawn maintenance company to come by, which is another whole thing. And I pull up, and at the time I didn't have my car, so I got a lift here, and there are like 4 people on my front lawn, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? So I get out and I say hello, and this guy's on a big ass riding lawnmower with the blade way too down, absolutely obliterates my front lawn, just obliterates it, and I was just like, okay. So his wife comes over to me in tears, absolutely in tears,
Like on purpose, like to vandalize your yard.
No. They think they're doing me a favor.
Oh,
like it was part of like their apology because they came up to me and they admitted that they were one of the calls. And one guess what they look like. Anyway, so
though I must admit I'm surprised that they would own up to it.
Yeah. Well, it also helps that they were the next door neighbors, like friends.
Okay.
Like, so it was next door neighbors, and they were from like another street down. So now I'm trying to triangulate all the information, right? So I'm like, when did you call? And I'm like, okay, cool. If that was you, then you're call number 2. And then you're call number 3. So who's number 1? Who originated? Who's the bad guy?
Yeah.
Right? Who's the bad guy? So, and they're like, we're so sorry. We had like, it was a classic example of like one neighbor's paranoia kicking up another neighbor's paranoia, and then just exploding into like an absolute mess. What was really great was at one point I was really concerned that my friends were going to like pitchfork and like torch like this entire neighborhood. It was getting to that point because I was just like, I don't even know if I can sleep here. Like, also, why are you calling me at 3 a.m? It just didn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
And so so I even said in the because as they interviewed me, I'm like, it's like all you need to do if you know the address of something is public fucking record who owns this house.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard,
right?
And then you put my name into Google, it'll probably pull up my Facebook and Twitter account, which looks a lot like that black guy that you saw outside.
Yep,
it's not difficult, right? It's the very definition of profiling.
I love imagining this interaction where like the police officer knocks on your door and he's like, wait, you own this place? And he looks at you and you're like, and you're like, it's okay. I know what APIs are.
Yeah, right.
That's why I can afford this place.
Exactly. Nope. Hold on to that one. That's really funny you say that. So they stopped. Fortunately, there's no more calls. Actually, it's ended at 4 total. and they stop, and I posted like on like the next door, and like someone had messaged me was like, I can't tell you, I don't feel comfortable telling you who it is, but I know who it is, and like it's not personal, like she's whack, like it. Don't worry about it. I'm like, it's really easy for you to say, don't worry about it.
When it didn't cause you all this trauma.
Right. When this is supposed to be like the biggest purchase I'll ever make in my entire life and like the coolest thing I've ever done. And like, anyway, so I was like, okay, cool, I guess. I'll never forget every time I'm outside, they've moved since then, which I think is hilarious. The husband would always be, like, he'd be like working on his car or whatever, and he'd be like, hey man, just let you know, wasn't me, man. It wasn't me. And I was just like, and in my head, because I was like, yeah, thanks. And in my head, I'm like, that means it was you, bro. You feeling guilty, bro.
No one else is saying that every time they see me.
Right? So fast forward. So this is now like October 2020 is when this is happening, right? So September, October. So fast forward to September 2021, right? I'm out of town. My little brother rents a room from me here. And he's pulling up with his truck, and this guy in a van is like in our like had stopped in front. You know how like people like stop on the side of the road or whatever. He gets out and walks up to my little brother and starts like introducing himself. And he goes, "Hey, like yeah, sorry that you were just pulling in. I just wanted to stop by and say hello. My name is Joe, and welcome to the neighborhood." And I was like, so when I get back home, this is what my little brother tells me. And I was just like, so we've lived here for a year and a half. Welcome to the neighborhood. And then I was like, oh my God, it's him. It has to be him. What? That he'd been holding on to that guilty conscience for a year? That's the only thing that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So remember what you said about APIs, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was like, oh man, I wish he would come back by. I wish he would. A couple weeks later, I'm going to get lunch. By this point, I bought a really nice car. I have a Tesla. It's super awesome.
Nice.
And I pull in, and there's a van right behind me. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Really?
Like
and
he was just waiting.
Yeah, right? And or he was like behind me, or I guess like coming down the road. It's a small road. It's a small neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I've never been in this situation before where like, I don't know, man. Like, would you just walk up somebody's like random ass driveway that you don't know? I wouldn't, like, but he just do. Hey man, I'm Joe, and like what? And he says the same thing he said to my little brother. Welcome to the neighborhood. And I was just like, and I even said, I was like, hi Jacob, nice to meet you. Do you know that we've lived here for almost 2 years? He's like, yeah, I just haven't had the time to, COVID, da 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 da. And he starts talking, and then he goes, what do you do for work? And I go, oh my God, this guy, to your point about knowing APIs, that's what that question was about. Mm-hmm. How do you afford this?
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of myself because I almost clocked him. I almost just right then. Ah!
Dude, I sell heroin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so Breaking Bad. That's me, man.
I run a few girls on the corner too.
Yo, what's up? You want to hook up? Yeah. And so I was just like, I was nice. He's like, oh, I own a Tesla too, and like a little back and forth or whatever. And I was just like, and this goes back to the point around like I made earlier around like what you swallow, right? And so that was an experience where I was like, I could get arrested, right? Like for battery, like right now, and it would be totally worth it. But he's not worth it, because the reality of the situation is that I won, and he's been holding on to that guilt for a year and a half.
Yep.
And so I feel so I wave high and stuff like that. And the other thing I was joking my little brother, you know, the other weird thing about this is I'm the most popular guy in this fucking neighborhood now. Everybody knows who I am.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it sucks that's how it happened, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah. And you know what's wild about it too, is it'll never happen again. And like, in a weird way, I'm glad it was me. You know what I mean? Because it was like I was strong enough to like handle it, like where it may have broke people, but also like was I strong enough because of like the trauma that preceded it? Like it's a really interesting like question that really doesn't have an answer, but it's just like, well, it doesn't matter because you're here and this house is awesome and he can't take that away from you. Um, just a he's just this weird weird old guy that drives a weird white van.
It's fascinating too because I wonder, and I know that this, not to mitigate any of the things that you went through
Or minimize it.
the
Yeah,
trauma, right, or minimize it, because what you went through was wrong and should not have happened.
No doubt.
The question, which has no bearing on that, doesn't change the outcome, is what was the intent when they made the call, right? Like, was this literally like? Because I think that there are some of these interactions that come out of well-meaning hysteria or like the neighbor. The fact that the neighbor was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. We were call number 2," right? Like that says to me like these are probably people that are not overtly racist, that are not they are not trying to make your life difficult. Their actions were driven by institutional racism, by fear, by things that are no less disgusting or no less deserving of contempt.
And in many cases worse.
Absolutely. And yet at some level you kind of have to give some amount of grace for the individuals, even though the system and all of the other things that played into it kind of makes you go like, yep, this is disgusting. We're trying to change. And part of that is maybe giving some grace for them and even trying to create a closer relationship so that hopefully they can let go of some of those fears and phobias and things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, because like, and I think because I am not infallible. I am a human. I give grace to what I like to call 2, 3, and 4. I don't think that I have the ability currently to give grace to this one, to number 1. I don't think, because I think at a certain point you started this gravy train, right? But you hope that there was no illicit intent, but then these calls were at 3 a.m.
Yeah, what the hell?
This wasn't 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This was at 2 and 3 a.m. Like that to me speaks of maliciousness, which is why I think I feel like there was some intent. And even still, like you coming over, that's a power move, right? There's definitely that part of it too. But to bring it all back around, so I mentioned that the neighbor had moved out, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a black family of 5 that live there now. And I said what's up to them. This is like a week or 2 ago. And I burst into tears and I ran in because I realized that what happened to me will never happen to them. And that made it sort of worth it in that way.
That's cool. I mean, it's cool to have that perspective.
Terrible and cool, yeah. Right.
It's
all perspective.
It's an awful thing to happen, but it's I sincerely hope that you're right and that never does happen to them, and that's a step forward. If you know,
yeah, painful, but yeah, yeah, exactly,
very painful.
And so, because like let's just be fucking cool to each other. Like it's not hard. It's really not.
We're this is sort of a tangent, but are you familiar with Dunbar's number?
I feel like it's something I should be familiar with, and I don't think that I am.
So Dunbar's number is a fascinating concept that I geek out about. I've been writing a book on, I've been releasing it piecemeal as articles on LinkedIn about engineering management. But anyways, this is something that I talk about a lot on there. Dunbar's number is effectively the maximum concurrent connection limit for humans in a network in a social network. So the number is about 150. This is something that lots of different sociologists and people that study human relationships have come to, and it's effectively the size of your network of people that you can know well and have context for and maintain context for is about 150 people. Like, and it's stratified, right? Like you have like your like one or two people that you like spend your life with, right? This might be like a partner, a friend, like a really close friend that like they know everything that happens. It's that person that like, you know, when something good or bad happens, who's the first person you let know, right? It's that person. But there's only so many, like there's a small number of those people that you can maintain because the amount of time it takes to maintain that level of context with them in their lives means you're literally spending time like being involved and spending time with them. Okay, there's then another tier of people that are like, you know, your friends, right? This is like they might be close friends even, right? Then you have another tier of like not so close friends, then another tier of acquaintances, and everybody beyond that is just like you're just people. I don't really know you.
You exist.
You exist, yeah. So the number of people is roughly 150 for most people. It can vary by person. Some people are able to hold more context or spend more time with people, but in any case, 150 is about it. And it's theorized that the evolution of this number, basically, this is the tribe size. That as we were evolving as humans, we evolved in tribes of roughly 150, either as a consequence of our capacity for holding context and understanding the size of the community, or, you know, it's like one or the other. I don't know, like the causal arrow, the causal relationship maybe isn't, if it's understood, I don't understand it. But in any case, it means that our tribe size is roughly 150. Like that's the size of people the size of a community that we can be involved in, that we can understand.
Right.
Well, the problem is, like, we don't live in tribes of 150 anymore. Our communities are enormous, right? Like your Jacksonville where you live is how many people? Like
over a million.
Over a million, right? There's no way that you can maintain context for that many people. And in fact, even your neighborhood, right, is like, how do you maintain context for that many people? Because if we were living in a community of 150 people, completely disconnected from the rest of the world, right? And there's a sheriff and there's a whatever, like, well, okay, like a lot of these misunderstandings are not going to happen because they know you, right?
Right.
Like all these people know you. The problem is we live in a world now where we can't know everybody. And that requires an adaptation now that we are, I hope, slowly progressing towards, but it's sort of a default level of empathy and understanding and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And that also has its problems of it leaves us more open to being abused. And this is a very complex thing that we're all trying to do here. But it's just these stories that you tell, that you live through of, like this is all the consequence of, or rather these are all consequences of living in a larger, less connected community and letting fears around otherness creep in and guide our decisions. And we need to do better if we're going to survive at this scale of community.
No, you're spot on. And I think that's what's funny about like social media, right? Like I am 100% that dude that is like, the first thing I do when I wake up is I check Twitter and Facebook. And then, I had to work, I guess, too. Yeah, maybe that's that, and some emails and things like that and other stuff, right? And that's been that way for 15 years, longer than that. The mistake that we made was thinking that it was a replacement versus a stopgap or a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And I think because of like what's happened the last couple of years, like we really, really paid the price for that. Because I know specifically me personally, like I never envisioned a situation where I would have the negative aspect of being a mega extrovert. Like I gained a bunch of weight. I was sad a lot because I'm a hugger and I love going out. And like, these are things that are not happening, right? Just carte blanche.
Yeah.
Done. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was just like this like really weird, like, like we can still like message each other and stuff. Like, but that's not different than what we were doing anyway. They were just typically like, there was a means to an end game, which was seeing on Friday night, drinks on me, drinks on you, like whatever it was, right? What party are we going to? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember the first day a bunch of us went out after we'd all gotten like fully vaccinated and like waited the necessary wait time or whatever. And I'll never forget, we went out I went out to Riverside in Jacksonville at 11 a.m. And next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I've been out that entire time, just doing things. Like I forgot how to do this, right? Like even now, like it's because I think there's definitely a piece of many people that like we're gonna, because there's a lot of conversation about like the normal and stuff like that. First of all, normal is boring and doesn't really exist, I feel like.
Yeah.
And we're not going back to 2019.
No.
And also, it's a mistake to even think that that's going to happen anyway.
Right.
It's about what's happening now and in the future, right? Which ties back to the point around like this sort of native sense of like, well, like because I've always been a big proponent of like, take care of your people, right? Like I'm a fiercely loyal defender of ridiculous people, and that I really, really care about. And then you don't see them in real life for almost 2 years. Like, oh boy, like the most we were able to ever like represent that was something called Club Quarantine, where we would get on a Zoom call, and my buddy Brooks, who's a DJ, would DJ, and we're sitting here like as we are, drinks and dancing, and like just ridiculous. It was ridiculous, but it worked. Like that's what was weird about it. Like we did it for like I think almost a few months at least,
wow.
that I can recall. But it worked because it was like, and then like there were even like sidebar conversations and like Zoom messages, and like people are checking in with each other, and like loud like I miss yous, and like just this like connection piece, because like it was just like we're gonna lose our shit if we don't fucking do something.
Yeah.
And this was what goes back to the whole classic point of like humans are like they need that level of
we crave connection.
It's just the volume bar is different
Yep.
from introvert to ambivert to extrovert or whatever, right? And so like I can't even tell you how many of my friends that were like, oh thank God, just seeing nobody was great. And I was like, this does not resonate with me at all.
See, okay, but I'll give you a window into that as an
Yeah.
introvert who, at some level, can identify with that. There is, we still crave connection.
Yeah.
But we who are introverts sometimes do not recognize when the dysfunction that we are feeling, the depression, the feelings, the whatever, come from having lacked it. So we get into a funk and we're like, why? And then we go spend time with friends or whatever, and we're like, I feel better. Like we just haven't we don't put that connection together all the time, that we still need that, because we also like being connected with ourselves and spending time alone and all of that. And I'll tell you, as somebody who traveled a shitload before the pandemic and got sick,
hey, you know me, man. Yeah.
and got sick all the time, that part I love, of not getting sick. Like not getting sick, not being sick 2 weeks out of every month is my favorite part.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's the thing. This is what ties it back to empathy. Is like I'll never forget like when I spent 2 weeks in Japan in May of 2018, and like with masks, like if somebody was sick, they were wearing a mask and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like how foreign that felt. Right? Like, yeah, we're in a foreign country and stuff like that, and like it's so quiet, everyone's like so nice and sociable and amazing and stuff, and then like why haven't we been, I remember specifically, I'm like, why haven't we just been doing that always? Like that just seems smart. Like, yeah, you still got to go and do what you need to do, but like the old world was you sneeze in the grocery aisle, and like that's just the way it is. Now it's like everyone's like duck and cover, like
we just kind of accepted it as the cost of doing business.
100%.
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, I don't know what the numbers are now, but I remember I was looking at one time where like everyone's like, Japan's numbers are low, and I was like, no shit, they're low. Like,
they respect each other.
Right. They've been social distancing since birth. Like, so it's just like, and like that, even though like I was like, I need like that physical like connection and stuff like that. But you know, like maybe I give pause now because of what's going on, you know. But yeah, and so I think this goes back to the whole like just being better listeners and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where like whereas like it's okay if your friend doesn't want to hug today. Like that is really difficult for me. And I was just like, but like you wanted one yesterday, like it doesn't matter like why. It's just like, you know what, today, like I'm just not feeling like physical touchy shit today, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's totally fucking valid, totally valid, right? But it's something that I absolutely had to like almost be taught. This goes back to my rebellious side, right? Why not? Like, are my hugs not good? My hugs are great. Like, I'm the king of hugs.
I'm soft
like,
in all the right places.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm great at this. What are you talking about? Like, I'm wearing Old Spice deodorant. Like, I smell great. Like, what's wrong? You know. So there's that whereas I think it's about just finding out where people are,
Yeah,
and just asking the question of just like, hey, like, what's up? You know, how are things today? Like it's funny you touched on engineering management, and like I'm something that I've done recently was like a majority of my career has been very passion heavy and very passion oriented, because like anything outside of like my passion space, which sounds really weird to say out loud, should
makes
use
it
another
sound like
word,
a
but here we
room
are.
in your house.
Yeah, right, this is my passion space. Like, all right, Jacob, cool, man.
Wow.
Jacob's fucking weird, bro. All right, it is like anything outside of it doesn't exist. Like
Yeah.
one of like the complaints that my folks had growing up was, which I love analyzing now, these little things that happen when you were younger that like are actually like really important things about how you are today, which is wait a minute, Jacob, you're telling me that you can memorize all 150 Pokemon but you can't memorize your algebra formulas? Yeah, but like instead of analyzing why that is, it's don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Do the opposite.
Because if they'd analyzed it, it's well, because I give a shit about that. And
Correct.
Then it's well, how can you make me give a shit about algebra? And then I'll memorize
exactly.
it.
Let's be honest with algebra. The answer was
Nah,
never.
never.
You were never going to.
Put it in a Pokemon game.
Yeah, right. Yo, done. Sign me the hell up, right? And then Pokemon Go happened, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it's a like how do we learn? Where was I at? What is this, age 11, 12 or something? And then how do we create a narrative that lets us continue to learn? Let's be honest. We've always been right about like we don't need to use algebra as adults. That was true.
Yep.
100% true. Right? We were right to feel that way. But it's because I say so. That doesn't really work for me. Like I have a shirt that says chaotic good, which is a D&D alignment if you didn't know.
Yeah.
And right below it says moral free rebel. And I was like, that is 100% how I would describe myself. No,
and I feel like that's a shit. And maybe this is not true, but maybe this is just my perspective. I feel like that's a huge generational difference.
It is.
Like, because that's how I operate by default too, right? Like I don't have trust in institutions. I don't like anybody. If the reasoning is because I said so, well, you can fuck off. Like,
yeah, not good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're going to tell me why, I'm going to understand it. I want to know the why. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like, so now this is a bit of a tangent, but in my managerial career in engineering, that has been the biggest difference is the boomers and sort of late Gen Xers who are generally still running most of the companies and handing down the directives expect you to just take your orders and like, you know, you're gonna, this is why, not in all companies, not in all places. Right. But like,
sure, of course,
that managerial style is very much like, well, this is, I'm telling you, so that you're going to do this. And then we go, but why? And that's one of the key sort of places where we butt heads is we want to know why. They don't always want to tell us. And then
where does that's when your classic disagree and commit type scenario comes in. But I brought up the engineering management thing and then tangented to bring it back to something that's happened recently, is like this is exactly the same thing of like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do we need to do before the end of the sprint? Like all this other stuff. And now it's my one-on-one start with, how are you? And I'm just like, you care about that? And there's a part of me that like doesn't trust it, but I also think it's because like I lived through a really bad burnout and some really like awful like leadership like stuff, and it was very much a situation of like, I need to, like, for this my own sanity, trust nothing and no one from a engineering perspective and a work perspective, and I need to, for my own psychological safety, yeah, I can be passionate about this, but I cannot give my all of me into it anymore. That worked for a really, really long time, and then it chewed up and spit me out, right? And so, now it's like, oh, like you, like, no, we like legitimately give a shit about like how you're doing. There's definitely a aspect of it that has to do with productivity and honesty and accountability and things like that. But you mean you care about me as a person? What do you mean? Which I know is because like my experiences before startup life, which I love now, was very enterprise heavy, which you are a number, no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes numbers go up and sometimes numbers go down. And then with this, where it's just like, well, like if you're not doing good, like maybe take a day off. I'll never forget, Matt, the first I got yelled at the end of December for not taking enough paid time off.
That makes
I've
me
never
so
had that
happy to
happen.
hear.
I've never heard that happening in my entire life. You didn't take enough time off. You need to fuck off for 2 weeks. Gladly. But even still, I'm just like, oh shit, yeah. I like, it's April 14th as we're recording this, right?
Yeah.
How many days have I had off this year? But 0. And my boss was like, Jacob, it's time to go away now. Like,
yeah. That's a good boss. Because I would be telling you that too. Yeah.
Right. But like, we have all these like institutionalized like pieces of the pie that like cause us to like reject what they're saying as truth. Like there's a pardon the verbiage, but I think it's called slave leadership, or like it's like something like that, where it's like it's about the team, obviously.
Oh, servant
right?
leadership.
But it's servant. There we go.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I fucked it up. And I was like, and I remember I was doing some research on it, and then I was reading about it, and then I was like tying it into like some of my previous bosses, and I was like, my favorite bosses were those.
Yep.
I didn't know that there was a term for it, or that was a style. I was just like, I like this person. He's cool.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, oh, but what's really cool is like it's like a cultural thing at Grafana, thankfully.
That's awesome.
So I'm a big fan, which is why I work there. But what's really wild about it though is that there's still even now a piece of me that struggles with trusting it, because I've just been burned so many times, you know? And so it's just like, so then I made a decision, and I was just like, I'm just going to be honest about it. And then, but what I realized was, because I'm being honest about it, that also is what creates that trust factor too. And so it's just like, I picked up what you're putting down. Like if there's a one-on-one that I haven't dropped an F-bomb in, I didn't have a one-on-one.
Yeah, and I'll tell you too, from the manager side of things, it's very interesting because, well, I'll say, so the whole thing about servant leadership, or at least a big part of it in my view, is viewing yourself not as sort of like in this hierarchy of being on top of the team. Like, this isn't your team. These aren't your people, in the sense that like they don't belong to you. Like, they are your team and your people in the sense that like you talk about family or teammates, right?
Yep.
And it's like, these are my teammates. I am one of them, and I am playing the support role, right?
Right.
Like, I'm not necessarily the leader. I'm here to support them and help them do whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
And having a personal relationship with people on your team, like being able to connect with them, is hugely important too. But it also gets complicated because as a manager, you are there to be an advocate for them, and also you have to look out for the business. So I'll tell you, like, there's times where like I've had to fire people, and I do genuinely care about that person, and I genuinely worry about them and what's going to happen after they leave the company.
That conversation's over, yeah.
And yet, because you have to care about the welfare of the entire team and the entire company, you've had to come to this
decision for everyone involved.
It's the best decision for everyone, and yet you know it's going to be difficult for them, and you do genuinely care about them, and yet you still have to fire them. Like, it can be heartbreaking.
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time that I had to fire someone. This is way back in the day, and I'm like 19, by the way, and older gentleman, and it was call center stuff, and which is all productivity. That's all. It's all average handle time. I'll never forget it.
Min-maxing.
Min-maxing. 4.5 minutes. It's 6 minutes is too much. Why is it 6 minutes too much? Like, which is like it. As long as everything's getting done, like, who cares, right? But that's not how call centers work. And like, and there was some other like tardiness and things like that, and so like the call was made, right? But I remember, and of course this goes back to maturity, right? I was 19, so I didn't know any better, and I remember just being like, that being like almost like a career milestone of like, I have the power, air quotes, to do this, right? And then the meeting happens, and he's upset, and like, and it's like awful, like it's awful, and I remember thinking like, this is not how I thought this was going to go, and I'll never forget. I remember that guy. I remember that moment so vividly, because and what I realized was I wasn't being empathetic to him. This was about me, right? Now the decision wasn't solely mine, right? I had an impact in the decision, right? And was it the right one? Absolutely. But it's all on how you handle it, right? Fortunately, I realized where I was wrong and recovered, so that it wasn't like absolutely inappropriate and awful. And he ended up, he's fine. Like, there was other situations on his personal life that was impacting things, which is typically what happens, right? For situations like that, because there's always an outside stimuli, right? We're not our work, right? Especially when our work is new account sales at a cable company. So like, they'll be fine.
No, you worked for the devil.
I did. But yeah, like, to your point around like my team and stuff like that. Oh my God. I had a boss that was my guys. They're my guys. I'll never forget it. Now it's just like, that's really bad. Like, that's really bad. Do you not work with women? Do you not work with non-binary people? They're all your guys, huh? Isn't that right? Interesting. I hope he's listening to this, because you know exactly who you are. But it's weird, like how like little things like that can like just explode a culture negatively impacting wise or positively, depending on people. That's why hiring is so difficult. Yeah. But also can be fun when you find the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we've been going for like 2.5 hours now. You've been incredibly generous with your time. I want to ask you one more question,
sure.
and then we'll wrap up with have you plug all the things that you're doing right now. Let us know where you're at. But here's the question, and that is that you are a self-professed storyteller. You are. It's one of the things that I love about you. You're fun to listen to. And stories and narratives have such power in our culture. It's one of the reasons why I love this kind of format and just being able to talk. Yeah. How has being a storyteller helped you in your career?
Oh man, whew, that's a big one. I think I found it by accident, because like, I've always been the guy at the bar that we're sitting around, beer in hand. This is what happened in this thing, or like, and I talk with my hands and like, upward, downward inflection without any control, like just, and it really became what I realized was, even like when I interviewed at Gremlin initially, was in the interview process, I was like as I was listening to myself, I was just like, oh man, this is going pretty well. And then I realized that um, and I realize in a lot of cases, especially on the engineering side of things, that's what it's all about. Observability is the story of what our infrastructure and applications are doing, which is why we invest so much time and energy into it, which is why I had so much fun breaking shit all the time in my previous life, right?
Which is the
Um,
explanation, by the way, for Priest of Chaos, which was included in your
yeah,
your
very nice. Appreciated that.
name. So
Yes, indeed.
for those who
Wink
are
nudge.
unaware,
Yeah.
chaos is the practice of trying to break stuff, break your systems in ways that lets you learn about them. Talking about software to non-software people is always difficult because it's like
Yeah, it is.
parsing through 8 layers of magic before anyone can really
The
understand.
irony is, and you'll appreciate this because of our previous work relationship, is that it's way easier to explain chaos engineering to non-tech people than it is to tech people, by leaps and fucking bounds.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like it's gonna break eventually, so break it on your terms.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And I was just like, do you want to come into this call with me to explain this to this, you know, not dot com, it's like not 2000 anymore. This enterprise like software developer, please, thanks.
Because they're
like
they're precious about it, and they're like, why would I try and break my thing
Right.
that I built? Yeah.
The precious, it's the precious. I'm like, it's gonna break anyway, bro. Anyway, so what I realized was, is what I realized, especially when I worked at Fanatics, which was right before my Gremlin experience, when I was an SRE, site reliability engineer, for those of you who didn't know. And so sometimes we got woken up for stuff, and which was not awesome. Even before that, I worked overnight doing monitoring and things. And I would always I'll never forget, like, oh, I don't know how to do this. It's 4 a.m. and I'm going to have to wake up the next person. And like how awful I felt about that. Not because at the time, because I was still fairly young, like I felt like I failed, when the reality was like, this person has the knowledge and I don't, right? Which is how I think I learned so quick, because I was like, if I learn how to do that, I don't have to wake them up, which makes them happier, which makes me happier,
Yep.
right? Winning. And that's when I think I started to unlock that, like, telling stories, because SRE horror stories are typically super incredible to listen to. You've heard my Black Friday, Cyber Monday story a million times. And so I'll save that for another day. But the reality of it was, it's wild. Like, shit broke, millions of dollars were lost, and like I was there. Look, I was there. I have the t-shirt, the tattoo, everything. And then I would tell that story, and then I would see like ears perk up. And then I realized that they both had empathy for the story that I was telling, and then they also had a story of their own, whether they felt comfortable telling it or not. I remember so vividly. I was doing a like a hallway track at like a conference, and like it was essentially like, this room is about horror stories, and I was telling like a story, and then nobody would volunteer, and I remember thinking, I'm like, that's really interesting, like, because in my mind, like, I'm like, if I feel comfortable telling the story, then like someone else will raise a hand and like, let's have a good time over a beer or whatever.
Yeah.
But like nobody did. And then like I would have like my CTO tell a story, and I would have like our VP of product tell a story. And then I ended up just being like, this is a safe space, you guys. Like, we're all just here to learn from each other and just listen. And then so I essentially had to call everybody out.
Yeah.
Like, you're not here to listen to our stories. It's a collaborative. This goes back to collaborative storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Weird. And then that's when like the light bulb started to come on, and then the camera started to come on, and then people started to talk and stuff. Because the reality of the situation and the lesson that I wanted to teach people at the time was, what happens to you in your company is not isolated.
Yeah.
Everyone's shit breaks.
Yep.
Everyone's processes fail. Everyone oversleeps their on-call call. Like,
Yep.
all these things happen. You are a human being. You are not perfect. And so that's when I was
a
like,
core principle of site reliability engineering, right? Which is that
exactly,
the fault lies in the systems, not in the humans.
Correct. 100% truth. And then I was like, then I realized the power of me telling these stories, because there are people that don't feel comfortable with that. And I'm immune. I'm fortunate to be immune to embarrassment, and don't really care what people think about me if they're total strangers, right? Like, right. I'm pretty transparent, loud, ridiculous, and brash. what you see, what you get with me. And and when I realized that that was a really great way to learn trust or not learn trust, gain trust, is when I became really successful, I think. And when like I got hired, and then when I started to do talks, and then I was like, oh man, I'm pretty decent at this whole talk thing. It also helps that like the C-level executives were like, we don't want to do them because we're introverts and we don't want to do stuff. And I was like, I like doing stuff. And so that sort of has continued to lead me to where I am now. What's really interesting now is I'm in an interesting spot where I've sort of done everything I wanted to do in tech, which is kind of where because first of all, so my biggest goal was that 6-figure income thing that I did. That was 4 years ago, right? And I've been fortunate enough to have more roles and do deeper and more interesting things. And so like now it's just like, do you just keep going up for the money's sake of it? Well, not really. Like I left a pre-sales role to come here. So you arguably could have made more money there, but it was never about the money there. That was just a thing. I know we're going along here, but I had a big disagreement with our VP of sales. He's like, you're in sales. It's a pre-sales role. And I was like, no, I educate. I tell stories. Yeah, that ends in a deal. Sure. Makes money. Cool. But that's not what it's about.
Yep.
Like, well, it is because you're in it. And like, this is back and forth and stuff. And I was just like, but I'm also the number one guy in the company and the largest deals of the company history. And like all these, I'm number one in every metric. So like, you can't really take that away from me. So like, it's what I'm doing works. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
see, that's fascinating. I'll interject for a moment because I also spent some time in sales, and that I have found what you've just articulated is two, maybe not the only two mindsets, but two of the most prominent mindsets. And one is that sales is manipulation, and the other is that sales is education. Yeah. And I have found that those who embrace more of an education mindset tend to be more successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that old school mindset is still very prevalent of sales is all about manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And so it was way more important. Like the deal sizes were not really important to me ever. Like it was like, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Totally cool. So do the thing. It was more important to me that like specifically the sentence that I used was, will that person sleep tonight because of what we're doing? That's what's important. And I find that like now that I'm on the other side of it from like monitoring and observability perspective, now things are even more complicated. Because now I'm not just breaking stuff. Now I'm trying to figure out like, how do I help you figure out how shit's broken? But even still, like, I'm not as, to be perfectly frank, I'm not as excited about that as I was with, which makes perfect sense because like breaking things sounds way more fucking cool, right? But I also think like I'm definitely cognizant of, and something I do every year is I reevaluate. Like, what am I doing? Where am I going? And don't worry, Grafana Labs people, I'm not going anywhere. Calm down. I'm not saying this is where I announce mine. No, I'm just kidding. What do I want to do now?
Yeah.
What's my direction? And so what's difficult is now one classic example is when I left Gremlin, a bunch of my friends were like, "Oh, you're doing content creation full time. You're doing the Empatheatre full time." The reality is that's way fucking less money by a lot, by several zeros.
Yes.
That would be a very bad decision. But how to find the balance of both? Because what I realized was I took that creative outlet that I had and I moved it over here. And so the passion's over here, but like a little bit over here, but enough to sort of keep me safe, you know? And so now it's I don't know what's next. That's both terrifying and exciting. And I like the combination of both of those things. And so we'll see. That's what super resonated with me when you left tech. I was just like, I totally get it.
And spoiler, I think I'm coming back to the place that you've come to, which is, you know, I'm looking for jobs again. I think I'm going to be going back, but I've learned that content creation is something that I love, and it's something that I intend to keep doing. So like this podcast is something that I intend to do, like in the long haul.
Good.
As well as like I've started a gaming channel and I've started the making channel and things like that. But it's fascinating that, you know, you hit this point. It's almost like from a money perspective, like if you played survival games, like video games where it's like, you know, they're called like survival based video games. There comes a point where you have your food and your shelter, and then you're kind of like, what now?
Yeah.
Right.
All my needs are satisfied. Yeah.
Yep. There's a point where you kind of go like, I guess I beat the game.
Yeah. Roll credits.
Like, you know, because like everything else from there is like sandbox and creativity. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have been in tech, certainly there are other careers too, but tech is highly lucrative right now, has been for a little while. Yeah. It's weird to hit that point in your life where like maybe you can't retire yet, but but certainly you're kind of looking around and going like, well, kind of feels like I beat the game. What next?
Yeah,
and
especially
how do I want to create?
This is also a generational thing that we talked about. Like my dad's been at the same job, same title for most like 30 years, something like that. He's about to retire. Should have retired like 10 years ago. That's another conversation. But and he's about to, right? And I'm super happy for him. But like, I'm coming to that realization at 35.
Yeah.
Right. Like that like there's definitely been positions where I was like, I will be here forever. And then things happen. Right.
Right.
Because that are outside of your control, that's just the reality of tech sometimes. But now I know that I'm not. So it's like, do you keep the tech job to justify your D&D habit? Probably, at least for now.
Well, see, and this is where, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people that I used to manage and that I'm still friends with, and I believe this is kind of my theory, or that there is a place that we are getting to, the disengagement that we're seeing in careers across the board, has less to do. There's certainly a lot there with leadership styles and cultures, company cultures, and generation gaps, and all of that plays in. But I believe that a decision that I have made and that a lot of other people in our generation have started to make more consciously is that work is not our lives.
Yes.
And that this idea that we had been given, like the whole hustle culture that was real big when we were growing up, and
no doubt,
and in our early 20s and whatever, that, you know, you got to work, hustle, get yours,
work
you know,
hard. If you can work 60 hours, you work 60 hours.
All of that, right? And we're sort of like, we're all coming to the realization that like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a life. Like so we're getting to this point where like work-life balance isn't necessarily even about hours anymore. It's not even necessarily about like, you know, you have your 9 to 5 and then you get to live your life. Like, no, it's
cognitive load.
Cause there's a certain amount of like there's a lot of jobs that we have now, careers, like any job that you can classify as a career has a certain amount of overhead that you take with you even outside of working hours. And we're starting to be more cognizant of that and going like, no, you know what? My job is a thing that I do, and it's important, and it contributes to society in some way. It's how I make money, and it's how I pay for these things. Maybe it's something that I'm passionate about. Maybe it's not. Hopefully it is to some degree, but even if it's something that you're passionate about, like I'm passionate about leading people. But even then, you need to be careful about drawing boundaries, because it can burn you out. You can let it overrun your life. It can take over the things and even destroy the things that you love. And all in the name of what you thought was doing something that was really good for you and your long-term financial health and all of that. So the thing that we're coming to, I believe, as a generation, is this place where we're going like, we need boundaries, even in our own heads. and we need to have meaning in our lives outside of just our careers.
Yep. And then the very like classic response to it is millennials don't want to work. It's like, no, we just want to like it not to be all about that. That's really it. Like that's all. Like, you know, and also like it pay us all right, you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing. We're it's not that we don't want to work, it's that we want to work, but we want our lives to have meaning beyond our work. And we want our work to have meaning beyond the lives of the people we're working for. In other words, we want our work to benefit us too, right? Like we want to be paid a fair share of like we don't want the fact that Elon Musk gets to ride on a rocket to space, or I mean Jeff Bezos, because I guess, you know, whatever. Like we anyone owning a mega yacht,
white rich guy here.
Anyone owning a mega yacht can go fuck themselves because they got there off of the toil and sweat of other people, and we don't want to be the people that are building those for them, right?
Spot on.
So
exactly correct. Yeah, like I even super recently was dealing with a bit of burnout because I was like, I'll literally be sitting at like doing work and stuff, and then what creeps into my head is like all the writing I need to do for my D&D campaign, and then I don't do any work, and I'm just like, oh, that's not good. I gotta fix that. So yeah. So it's all about being honest with yourself.
Well, Jacob Plicque the third of his name, teller of stories. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your stories with us. Plug your stuff, man. Where can we find you? What should we be watching? The Empatheatre certainly is up there on the list, but I'll let you give us the list.
Sure.
Where can we find you?
Here we go.
What should we be
rapid
watching?
fire. So you can follow me on Twitter, Duval King Jacob on the internet, where I'm always yelling about stuff and happiness and positivity and all that good shit. And also while you're there, follow the Empatheatre over there on Twitter as well as on Twitch. So typically Tuesdays and Wednesdays is where you can find me there. Tuesdays right now, Eulalia 5e, a Redwall story, my D&D 5e campaign based off of my favorite book series, Redwall. And that's at Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, twitch.tv/the Empatheatre. Wednesdays, Duval's Gaming Journey, where I play a lot of my video games that I grew up on and sort of figure out like how that may be the storyteller that I am today. So that's also at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And as well as I'm on a bunch of other channels. Like I run Duval and Dragons, our Chrono Trigger 5e D&D campaign, bi-weekly, Sundays, over on twitch.tv/Somati Games. The opposite Sunday, Dragonlance Dragons of Rebirth, where I play Professor Isonoff. And that's also at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So like this week is that, and then the following week. So you can always find me there on Sunday evenings. And then bi-weekly Thursday currently, Outcast and Outclass, which is the hat I'm wearing right now. Speaking of dressing up, there you go. Where I play Hideaki, our Empty Sky Kasene Summoner. And he's got a Dragon Eidolon by the name of Overnosa. And that's on at 8 p.m. Thursdays, bi-weekly. So like tonight. But of course, whenever this is up, who knows? And that's at twitch.tv/Wobbles Maple Syrup. And there's a bunch of one-shots and charity stuff that I'm up to. So just follow me on all the socials and stuff. I also have a link tree, which has a bunch of content that I've created over the years and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, do that. Oh, and the Empatheatre has a YouTube channel. There we go.
Awesome. That is an impressive list. And we'll put the links in the description for this video, so they'll all be there. Jacob, this has been a blast. Thank you so much.
Super fun, man. Yeah, no worries. Anytime.
Awesome. We'll get catching up.
Yeah, man, for real.
I think we need to end on a Duval. Can you give us one more Duval?
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. Of course. Would you like to join me?
Yes, hell yes.
All right, ready. 3, 2, 1. It is so fun to say.
Hell yeah.